Chapter 601, A Christmas Gift Left Behind. As the Christmas holiday approached, Malfoy waved goodbye to John, a Protoss peeking from his pocket. They boarded a thestral-drawn carriage, heading towards the Hogwarts Express. Amidst the bustling crowd, John stood solitary in the foyer, resembling an old man left behind. He pondered, "Why do I feel so alone amidst such a crowd?" Filch was nearby, tallying the students departing for the holidays, while Professor McGonagall approached John with a concerned expression. "Aren't you leaving for the holidays this year, Wick?" she inquired. "I still have matters to attend to, Professor," John replied respectfully. "Certain responsibilities prevent me from leaving." Professor McGonagall frowned slightly. "You should spend time with your family. You're always overburdening yourself." She was genuinely worried for John, who had only returned home once during Christmas, making him seem more isolated than even Harry. "You've sacrificed too much and never allow yourself a moment's rest," she lamented. John, however, remained steadfast. "Ensuring the safety of those I care about is more important than a brief respite. I'm still young. I can manage." "Time flies quickly," Professor McGonagall remarked with a hint of melancholy. "Before you know it, I've become an old woman." John offered a warm smile. "But you are a respected elder, Professor. I've always held you in high esteem." Her mood lightened at his words, unable to harbor any ill feelings toward such a dedicated student. "Well, even if you're not going home, remember Hogsmeade is always there. Enjoy your holidays, Wick." "I will, Professor. Thank you," John assured her, watching as she departed. Professor McGonagall, much like John, rarely took time for herself, often staying at Hogwarts during holidays. As John stood in the now quiet foyer, he reflected on the peace that had settled over Hogwarts. This year, unlike the previous ones marked by turmoil and danger, felt unusually calm. The absence of Voldemort's chaos allowed for a serene holiday season, a rarity at Hogwarts. Outside, Hector and Hermo reveled in the snow, experiencing its wonder for the first time. John contemplated, perhaps this year we can celebrate differently. Peace, after all, was a precious commodity, its value heightened by the sacrifices made during times of conflict. Returning to the castle, John's thoughts shifted back to his responsibilities. Training the Protoss guards and researching treatments for the blood curse consumed his time, keeping him secluded in the Stars Club. Even Professor Slughorn rarely saw him. As Christmas approached, John emerged from his seclusion, stretching and massaging his sore neck. He picked up the newspaper, a habit formed from receiving updates from Basil. The headline caught his eye. Grindelwald arrested and imprisoned in Poland. This news stirred mixed feelings in John. Grindelwald's imprisonment was significant, yet John knew the dark wizard's influence extended beyond prison walls. Perhaps direct execution would have been more effective, John mused, though he understood the complexities involved. Retreating to his dormitory, John wondered what Christmas would bring this year. Meanwhile, the Protoss of the Stars Club embarked on their own adventures, exploring the various magical rooms of the club. One Protoss ventured into the ocean room, catching a large fish and surfing with delight, while others played hide-and-seek in the forest room. Their joy was boundless, a stark contrast to the solemnity of the human world. Suddenly, amidst their play, in the warm glow of the morning sun, Ariana Wick awoke to find her room bathed in light. At the head of her bed, a small teddy bear with fluffy arms offered her the day's first greeting, its movements endearing and gentle. Ariana, her long blonde hair tousled from sleep, sat up and rubbed her eyes, a sudden recollection propelling her out of bed. She dashed downstairs, her steps quick and eager, with the little bear trailing behind, its short legs struggling to keep up. In the kitchen, Mrs. Wick was busy preparing breakfast, the scent of cooking filling the air. A glass of milk sat forgotten on the table as Ariana's attention was fixed on the Christmas tree, under which 5 gift boxes awaited. She turned to Mrs. Wick with hopeful eyes. "Can I open them, Mom?" she asked, her voice brimming with anticipation. Mrs. Wick, amused by her daughter's eagerness, playfully admonished, "Only after you've made yourself presentable." Ariana hurried off to wash up, while Watson Wick descended the stairs, his steps heavy, a clear sign of his late-night indulgence in reading I Swing the Great Sword at Hogwarts. Mrs. Wick eyed him with a mix of amusement and disapproval, questioning how long he had been captivated by the book. Watson, caught in the act, could only sheepishly admit to his fascination with Lockhart's engaging writing and the enchanting illustrations that brought the story to life. In an attempt to divert attention from his nocturnal escapades, Watson offered to help Ariana with her hair, a task that allowed him to escape his wife's scrutiny for the moment. In the bathroom, Ariana meticulously followed her Uncle John's instructions for personal hygiene, her actions careful and deliberate. Once ready, she returned to the living room, where Watson managed to tame her messy locks into silky smoothness. Finally, Ariana sat under the Christmas tree, her feet bare, as she eagerly began to open her presents. The family's large-headed gray owl, Kiki, and the little bear assisted in the festive ritual. The first gift she opened was a teddy bear with a pink headdress from Watson. Confident in his choice, Watson boasted to Mrs. Wick about the superiority of his gift, only to be met with disappointment as Ariana cast the bear aside, uninterested. Mrs. Wick's teasing remark highlighted Watson's oversight in understanding what truly captivated his daughter's heart. As Ariana continued to unwrap her gifts, she found a beautiful dress that shimmered like something out of a fairy tale. However, it too failed to capture her interest, and she casually tossed it aside. Mrs. Wick, unfazed, directed Watson to shovel snow outside, a task he protested but ultimately accepted under the threat of going hungry. The third gift, containing something metallic and mysterious, was quickly intercepted by Mrs. Wick, who decided it was best kept from Ariana for the time being. The fourth present, however, delighted Ariana, a beautiful emerald brooch accompanied by a card with an intriguing message, "I open the way in the fire." This gift, from Uncle John, was immediately cherished by Ariana, who felt a deep sense of attachment to it. She ran to her room to hide the brooch under her bed, a place she deemed safe for her newfound treasure. As the morning unfolded, the Wick household was filled with the warmth of family, the excitement of unwrapping gifts, and the gentle teasing that comes with understanding and love. After sorting through the gifts from her natal family, Mrs. Wick stepped out of the room, only to see Ariana hurrying down the stairs. She was about to inquire if Ariana had received John's gift when she noticed Ariana tossing a card into the fireplace. Instantly, the flames flickered and turned a mystical shade of blue. Mrs. Wick approached, her eyes widening in astonishment, perfectly mirroring Ariana's own surprise. "I'm here to find John," Ariana declared. After a moment of contemplation, Mrs. Wick nodded, "Perhaps it's not such a bad idea after all." With a reassuring grip, she took Ariana's hand, and together, mother and daughter stepped into the enchanted fireplace. As they disappeared, the flames reverted to their natural color, leaving no trace of their departure. Just then, Watson returned, opening the door with a gust of cold air following him. "The snow outside has gotten heavier. I suppose I can clear it later," he announced, expecting a response. The house, however, was eerily silent, save for Kiki's presence. Watson's gaze shifted to Kiki, confusion etched on his face. "Where are my wife and daughter?" he asked, his voice laced with a growing concern. The scene that unfolded was one of magic and mystery, a testament to the extraordinary world they were part of. Yet, for Watson, left behind in the silence of his home, the sudden disappearance of his loved ones was a puzzle that needed solving, with only Kiki as his clue. Chapter 602, Ariana in Hogsmeade. John discovered his gift in the bedroom, an overwhelming amount that made it difficult for him to even enter the room. Selecting one at random, he opened it to find a pink box that made him question the legitimacy of its contents. At that moment, Basil, his territorial owl, flew in, visibly upset by the invasion of other owls in its domain. It took a dozen small dried fish to appease Basil's anger. John knew well that if Basil had been in the dormitory, it would have been chaos with those owls. "I think I'll need to find some time to open these presents," John mused, aware that his attendance at Hogwarts was no secret in the wizarding world. The gifts, sent by admirers and those seeking favor, would take days to unwrap. He decided to tackle this task at night, hoping none of the gifts were explosive surprises from his eccentric uncles. Later, in the solitude of the auditorium, John contented himself with a simple meal of water and bread. Checking his pocket watch, he figured it was time for Ariana to wake up and open her presents. As he turned, a door materialized behind him. Stepping through, he was surprised to find his mother, Mrs. Wick, confronting a Protoss, with Ariana peeking from behind her. "Mom, why are you here?" John asked, dispersing the Protoss with a wave of his hand, which seemed to startle Mrs. Wick. Mrs. Wick, her eyes returning to normal from a pitch black, took a moment before pulling Ariana closer. "I need to protect my daughter from being abducted to some strange place," she explained. John, somewhat speechless at his mother's dramatic entrance, could only listen as she continued. "This doesn't seem like a strange place, nor are you a strange uncle. Just my son." "No, I think spending Christmas here would be nice," Mrs. Wick added, winking at John, who remained indifferent to his mother's attempt at being endearing. Meanwhile, Watson, John's father, was frantically searching for his wife and daughter. Confronting Cheeky, he demanded, "Where's my wife and children?" Realizing Cheeky couldn't speak, Watson found a clue in a card spat out by the flames, recognizing his son's handwriting immediately. "Going behind my back to find John," Watson muttered, donning his full wizard attire, including a custom-made robe and a wizard hat. He even retrieved a wand, usually a toy for Tom, from his storage. Standing before the mirror, fully equipped, Watson admired his wizardly appearance. Attempting to use the fireplace for travel, he threw in a card, which burned to ashes without effect. Confused and feeling abandoned, Watson exclaimed in frustration. In a fit of anger, Watson stormed out of the house, wand in hand, determined to confront the magical world that seemed to have left him behind. John Wick, after a peculiar display of aggression towards a snowman he had built the previous day, had caught the attention of the surveillance agents assigned to monitor him. The agents, puzzled by his actions, speculated on his mental state and intentions. The senior agent, with a tone of certainty, suggested that John was fully aware of their presence and was deliberately misleading them. Convinced by the senior's analysis, the agents decided to withdraw, underestimating John's perceptiveness and strategic mind. In Hogsmeade, Mrs. Wick felt an inexplicable discomfort, a sensation that seemed to be ingrained in her blood, reminiscent of the aftermath of a massive witch hunt. Ariana, holding tightly to a bear, a Christmas gift from John, explored the village with wide-eyed wonder, free from the constraints of the bracelet that John had removed, signaling her safety by his side. Mrs. Wick's attention was drawn to a wizard clothing store, contemplating a few purchases for Ariana. Meanwhile, John observed the village's peculiar customs, such as the popularity of ice cream during winter, and noted an amusing interaction between Filch and Miss Pince, deciding to keep their secret. Suggesting a visit to the Three Broomsticks for a warm butterbeer, John noticed Ariana's discomfort with the crowded tavern and opted for a quieter location. Upon learning of his mother's extravagant purchase at the wizard clothing store, John generously compensated the shop owner, ensuring his mother's happiness. Choosing the less frequented Pig's Tavern for its quiet atmosphere, John and Ariana encountered Aberforth, the tavern's owner. The sight of John and the young girl wielding a wand left Aberforth in shock, his reaction transforming from surprise to emotional recognition upon hearing Ariana address him as elder brother, rekindling a long-lost connection. "I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that request." Chapter 603, The Campaign to Kill Grindelwald. In the heart of Poland's Ministry of Magic, a heated debate unfolded. The arrest of Grindelwald, a dark wizard whose name once sent shivers down the spine of every European wizard, had left the magical community divided. Some rejoiced at his capture, while others mourned, aware of the chaos that could ensue. With the International Federation of Wizards election looming, the custody of Grindelwald became a contentious issue, promising significant political leverage to whoever held it. Grimm, the seasoned head of the Polish Magical Law Enforcement Department, paced the room, his expression a mix of anxiety and fear. "No prison can hold Grindelwald. He's like a ghost. Any confinement would merely serve as his playground," he voiced his concerns. Having witnessed the zenith of Grindelwald's terror in his youth, Grimm knew too well the threat he posed. The American Magical Congress's brief success in detaining Grindelwald had momentarily bolstered their international standing, only for him to escape, leaving a stain on their reputation. Grimm feared a repeat of such a debacle. "We must tread carefully, Minister," Grimm implored the Polish Minister of Magic. "This is not a blessing, it's a curse." The minister, unfazed, responded with a chuckle. Are you afraid, Grim? It seems there's no cage strong enough for Grindelwald. Grim, with a heavy heart, admitted his past admiration for Grindelwald, but was quick to clarify that Dumbledore's wisdom had shown him the error of his ways. The minister, however, seemed to misunderstand Grim's caution for cowardice, accusing him of sounding like a disciple of Grindelwald. Grim's frustration boiled over. He's not a pawn for your political games, he exclaimed, tearing off his tie in a fit of anger. Using him for your electoral gains will drag Poland into chaos. The minister, undeterred, faced Grim squarely. We are already in chaos, he declared, painting a grim picture of the current state of affairs within the Ministry of Magic, rife with corruption, poverty, and inefficiency. Grim, taken aback by the minister's blunt acknowledgement of their dire situation, listened as the minister laid bare the ugly truth of their governance. What are you proposing? Grim finally asked, his voice trembling. The minister's response was resolute. We start by killing Grindelwald. Grim recoiled at the suggestion. No, that's impossible. The International Federation of Wizards would never consent. The minister, however, was adamant. But my people will. It's time we took a stand. This bold declaration marked the beginning of a controversial campaign that would test the limits of justice and morality within the wizarding world. The decision to kill Grindelwald was not just a move against a dark wizard. It was a desperate bid to salvage a society teetering on the brink of collapse. The Minister of Magic cast a deep, contemplative look at Grim. I don't want to wait until it's too late to rectify the mistakes I've made, he stated solemnly. But Dumbledore. Grim struggled to articulate his thoughts. Grindelwald and Dumbledore once shared a bond akin to brotherhood. Despite Grindelwald's failures, he remained the person Dumbledore missed the most. I'll handle it myself, declared the Polish Minister of Magic after a brief pause. I will execute him publicly. Grim observed the minister's retreating figure with mixed emotions. In that moment, the Polish Minister of Magic transformed in Grim's eyes into a solitary warrior, bravely confronting the challenges facing the magical community. Initially, Grim had harbored disdain for the Minister of Magic. Although the minister had succeeded in capturing Grindelwald, his actions had inadvertently complicated matters for the Ministry of Magic. However, the minister's words prompted Grim to leave the ministry and venture to a wizarding gathering place. This place was far from the bustling charm of Diagon Alley in the UK, nor did it possess the spacious, romantic allure of France's high, didden locales. What it did have were the remnants of a war that had ravaged the Muggle world half a century ago. The aftermath of the conflict had not only decimated Muggle structures, but had also left indelible scars on the wizarding world. It was this realization that shattered Grim's idealized perception of the coexistence between wizards and Muggles. In the face of Muggle advancements, the wizarding world's survival seemed precarious. Amidst the ruins of the previous century, the opulent facade of Gringotts Wizarding Bank stood out, a stark contrast to its surroundings. He's right, Grim murmured to himself, standing in the middle of the road and surveying the area. We need to change. At another meeting of the International Federation of Wizards, held around Christmas, old Barty glanced at his pocket watch. The items have been delivered by Owl, he announced. Thank you, Pierce, he said to Pierce Thinkness, a man who had found himself in a fortunate predicament. Controlled by others who sought to exploit his identity, Pierce had been left imprisoned, only to be discovered by an Auror, asleep in a cellar with a bottle of old wine. Pierce's presence at the meeting alongside Barty Sr. indicated Barty Sr.'s intention to mentor him. Despite this, Pierce couldn't help but question, My lord, you could easily secure a position for your son within the Ministry of Magic. Why let him squander his talents? Old Barty sighed upon hearing this, a mixture of regret and resolve in his voice. He'll thrive in silver hands, he assured, though Pierce sensed the underlying desire of Barty Sr. to atone for past neglect towards Barty Jr. To Barty Sr., employing his son in a seemingly menial role was a small price to pay for reconciliation. Barty Sr. had hoped to spend this time at the overturned gardens with his son, but his obligations as Minister for Magic demanded his attention elsewhere. Reflecting on his past, Barty Sr. recognized his preoccupation with power and the subsequent realization of its accompanying responsibilities and void, which only deepened his longing for familial connection. "This might be our last meeting," Barty Sr. mused, observing the assembly of international ministers. The discussion soon turned to the contentious issue of Grindelwald's extradition, with Germany seeking his return and the United States proposing to detain him as a means to allay European fears. As the debate intensified, the Polish Minister of Magic intervened, suggesting a focus on addressing the widespread panic rather than Grindelwald's custody. His proposal was abruptly overshadowed by the arrival of two aurors escorting Grindelwald into the room, where he was made to kneel, a symbol of the tumultuous times they were navigating. In the midst of the tense gathering, Grindelwald's gaze lifted to meet that of the Polish Minister of Magic, who had just descended the steps to the center of the room. "I've always been puzzled," the minister began, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "Why are we even debating his place of confinement? He has blatantly violated our most sacred laws." He paused, surveying the room filled with representatives from various countries, his tone growing more incredulous. "Why? Have you all chosen to overlook this catastrophe? Since when did a criminal become a bargaining chip?" The room fell into an uncomfortable silence, no one daring to meet his gaze. Seizing the moment, the minister continued, "Well, let me enlighten you with a truth you seem reluctant to acknowledge." At that moment, Grimm stepped forward and handed a wand to the Polish Minister of Magic, who accepted it with a solemn grace. The representatives from the various countries watched, a mix of excitement and apprehension in their eyes. "Inger, what are you planning to do?" someone called out, panic edging their voice. "Put down the wand. This is a blatant disregard for the law." "He must be returned to Germany to face trial," another insisted. "Shh!" The Minister of Magic of Poland raised a finger to his lips, commanding silence with a simple gesture. "You are all afraid," he stated calmly, his voice cutting through the murmurs of dissent. "Afraid of his followers, afraid of the consequences." His gaze hardened as he pointed the wand directly at Grindelwald, who for the first time showed a flicker of fear in his eyes, though he remained silent. "In that case, let those who are fearless step forward," the minister declared, his voice steady and resolute. "I am prepared to shoulder the consequences." With a swift motion, he uttered the fatal curse, Avada Kedavra. A flash of green light illuminated the hall, and in its wake, a deathly silence fell over the assembly. Chapter 604, Yinga's Crime and Suspicions. "What are you doing?" The German representative gaped at the lifeless body on the ground, then turned his incredulous gaze towards the Polish Minister of Magic, his voice rising in outrage. "What have you done? You've used an unforgivable curse to take a life in front of us all. This is an unforgivable crime." He vehemently accused the Polish Minister of Magic. Calmly, the minister handed his wand over to Grimm and faced the accusations with a surprising admission. "Yes, I am guilty," he declared. The German representative's calls for immediate arrest were silenced by the minister's unexpected confession. "My crime is my inability to watch people suffer. My sin is my profound love for this land. My wrongdoing lies in not having eliminated this demon sooner, preventing him from harming my people." The Minister of Magic of Poland proclaimed as he walked towards the exit, his voice resonating with conviction. "My sin is standing up to fight when others flee." At the door, the Polish Ministry of Magic's personnel stood in solidarity. An auror, faced with the task of arresting the minister who had used an unforgivable curse, hesitated, overwhelmed by the moment. "Auror, fulfill your duty," the minister commanded. "No, I can't, minister," the auror replied, letting his wand fall to the ground. One by one, other aurors followed suit, unable to arrest their minister. The international representatives witnessed this act of defiance as they emerged from the hall. Grimm, holding the wand used in the crime, approached the minister. "I know you despise me for the trouble I've caused," the minister said, offering his hands to Grimm. "Do what you must." As the head of the Department of Magical Law Enforcement, Grimm was expected to embody justice. Yet, in a surprising turn of events, he broke the wand, discarding it, and instead clasped the minister's hand, declaring, "I cannot arrest heroes." This moment, captured by the press, depicted a stark contrast. On one side, international representatives, and on the other, the united front of the Polish Ministry of Magic. The image, along with the story of Ing Griffiths, the hero who defeated the Dark Lord, spread rapidly across the wizarding world. While some criticized the Ministry of Magic for its perceived cowardice, others lauded Ing Griffiths' bravery. His actions sparked a conversation across the ancient magical society. Meanwhile, Old Batty, observing the scene, sensed there was more to the story. He quietly instructed Lippy Kerber, a trusted colleague and friend of Tang Mi, to examine Grindelwald's body. "Grindelwald will not die so easily," he murmured, hinting at the possibility of deception similar to his own past use of Polyjuice Potion. Lippy, upon inspecting the body, discovered a peculiar scar on Grindelwald's finger. Just as he was about to investigate further, a tall Auror intervened, urging him to step back. This chapter of intrigue and defiance not only questions the nature of justice within the wizarding world, but also hints at deeper mysteries yet to be unraveled. In the hall, Lippy found himself surrounded by Aurors, their cold gazes fixed on him as their hands rested on their wands, ready for action. Sensing the tension, Lippy raised his hands in a gesture of peace, a playful smile on his lips. "Don't get excited, I'm just curious," he said, trying to defuse the situation. "There's nothing here for you to be curious about," retorted a tall Auror with a sneer. "This is Grindelwald's doing, isn't it?" "That's right, Grindelwald," Lippy confirmed, emphasizing the name. The tall Auror signaled for Lippy to step away from the corpse, and Lippy complied, stepping aside to watch as two Aurors took charge of the body. Feigning casual interest, Lippy remarked, "I thought all the Aurors were stationed outside." "Only those who lack faith in him would question his whereabouts," the tall Auror replied dismissively. "We're not fools." "Fools," Lippy echoed, his tone calm yet probing. "It's quite the coincidence, the timing of your surprise attack. All nations are on Grindelwald's trail, yet he remains as elusive as a ghost," Lippy mused. "We have our own sources of intelligence," the tall Auror interjected, his gaze sharp. "We prefer to take action to elevate the status of magic." "Is that so?" Lippy began, only to be cut off. "You should leave now," the tall Auror stated firmly, his stare unwelcoming. "Your companion is waiting outside." "Understood," Lippy nodded, making his way out as the Auror watched him go. With Grindelwald captured, the summit had concluded, and there was no further reason for them to linger. Meanwhile, Old Batty and Pierce walked through the gathering area of Polish wizards, the economic despair of the place evident at every turn. "I thought we were entering a ghetto," Pierce remarked, disbelief in his voice. "The Muggle War has taken its toll here," Old Batty explained, his knowledge vast. "Compounded by corruption, recovery has remained elusive." "It's hard to fathom," Pierce admitted, now understanding the Polish Minister of Magic's predicament. Grindelwald's influence had only worsened the situation. Lippy joined them, and Old Batty Sr. inquired, "What did you find?" "I used the appearance charm, and it worked, but there's something else," Lippy whispered. "Grindelwald has a scar on his finger." "I see," Old Batty acknowledged, glancing at the Auror trailing them. "Let's depart." In the Minister for Magic's office, the tall Auror reported his encounter with Lippy. "He might have discovered something," he said, questioning whether Lippy should be dealt with. "For now, we wait," was the response. Grindelwald, gradually reverting to his true appearance, stood admiring a painting of a windmill. "I don't understand why he chose here. It's impoverished, corrupt, and weak," the tall Auror pondered aloud. Grindelwald offered a meaningful look. "Joel taught me that the strong are worth following. The smaller you are, the more you yearn for greatness. They are as humble as dust, but I can elevate them," Grindelwald declared, holding the elder wand. "Survival of the fittest, the strong shall thrive." "I recognized my failure, so I've chosen a different path," he continued, his gaze fixed on the windmill painting, which had replaced a copy of the Secrecy Act on the wall. Grindelwald's ambitions remained unchanged, to elevate wizards and celebrate magic openly. Yet, this time he was taking a different approach, one that emphasized the survival of the fittest and the potential of a dedicated few to inspire the masses. "This time, I've seen far enough, Joel," Grindelwald mused. At Pig's Tavern, the scene was less grandiose, but no less intriguing. 3 patrons stared in disbelief at a goat, its ears adorned with a Protoss swing. "Clean this place up," John ordered bluntly, his gaze sweeping over the grimy table. Aberforth, on the verge of anger, was taken aback as Ariana prodded at the table, her finger coming away with a mix of oil stains and other unidentifiable grime. A tooth, a remnant of a previous altercation, was lodged in a pillar, catching Ariana's attention. Aberforth moved behind the counter, retrieving a rag that had seen better days. With a flick of his wand, he cast a cleaning spell, restoring the rag to its original yellow hue, a small step towards bringing some semblance of order to the chaotic tavern. It's conceivable that the yellow hue wasn't original. Aberforth approached, diligently cleaning the table with vigorous strokes. As he turned to leave, John gestured towards the stool. With a scowl, Aberforth returned to meticulously clean the stool. John inspected it with a touch before taking a seat. "Would you like anything to drink?" he asked. "Do you have butterbeer?" John inquired, casting a brief glance at Ariana before adding, "Preferably warm, if possible." Aberforth, without a word of complaint, disappeared into the back room behind the counter. After rummaging around for a bit, he returned with 2 glasses of butterbeer. The glasses, sparkling as if brand new, were placed on the table with care. The warmth of the butterbeer seemed to fill the room with a cozy glow, contrasting sharply with the previously cold atmosphere. John and Ariana exchanged a look, a silent acknowledgement of the small comfort in the midst of their uncertain journey. The butterbeer, with its rich, creamy taste and the soothing warmth it provided, was more than just a drink. It was a brief respite from their worries, a momentary escape into a simpler, more comforting world. Chapter 605, Aberforth and Dumbledore's Gift. Throughout their interaction, Ariana's gaze lingered on Aberforth with a mix of curiosity and confusion. Aberforth, seemingly uncomfortable under her scrutiny, busied himself behind the counter. John, after taking a sip of his butterbeer and finding the taste not to his liking, set it aside. Ariana, curious, picked up the drink and sampled it herself. John, noticing Aberforth's reluctance to approach, casually mentioned, "Yes, it's her." Ariana, puzzled, looked around, unsure who John was addressing. John explained, "Did he not mention that I possess a certain proficiency in legilimency? Your thoughts are as transparent as glass to me." Aberforth, caught off guard by John's insight into his thoughts, asked, "Why do you—" He was puzzled, as even Dumbledore had only come to terms with certain memories on the brink of death. John, with a shrug, suggested it was better Aberforth didn't know the full extent of his abilities. "I don't want Ariana to feel isolated," John stated earnestly, addressing Aberforth directly. "You're her brother, and she deserves to know the truth." Ariana, overhearing the conversation, looked at Aberforth with a newfound suspicion. The title of brother now seemed to carry a different weight, one that John had assumed in her eyes. Aberforth, concerned, inquired about Ariana's well-being. John, standing up and taking Ariana's hand, introduced her formally as Ariana Dumbledore Wick, indicating her new identity and the life she was leading. Aberforth, with a heavy heart, acknowledged that perhaps Ariana was better off away from their tumultuous past. Despite his outward indifference, Aberforth was internally conflicted, his emotions a whirlwind of regret and longing. John observed, "You were once her favorite brother, though that seems a distant memory now." Aberforth, accepting his failures, expressed his wish for Ariana not to return to their old life. He acknowledged both his and Dumbledore's shortcomings as brothers, but took solace in seeing Ariana's improvement under John's care. John reassured Aberforth that Ariana was not imprisoned. She was free to explore her potential, and he would support her unconditionally. Aberforth, overwhelmed with gratitude, thanked John for his generosity and for allowing this reunion. John, dismissing the notion of using family as leverage, encouraged Ariana to get to know Aberforth. Ariana, initially hesitant, eventually recognized Aberforth not as the brother she remembered, but as a connection to her past. She smiled, recalling the paintings of their great-grandfather that John had shown her. Aberforth, seizing the moment, invited Ariana to view his collection of paintings, a testament to his hidden talent. Ariana, intrigued, followed him, leaving John waiting with a promise to always be there for her. After their visit, John and Ariana prepared to leave, bidding Aberforth farewell. As they departed, Aberforth remained seated, lost in thought and the joy of Ariana's miraculous return. He mused on John's role as the revered king of Hogwarts, understanding the depth of his character and leadership. Aberforth's reflection on family and loyalty underscored the profound impact of Ariana's visit, leaving him to contemplate the true meaning of kinship and redemption. "Chip, Wick is where you belong, Ariana." Aberforth's voice was resigned, a mixture of defeat and acceptance. He had seen the trust Ariana placed in John, and the tenderness the Second King showed her. Turning towards the shattered mirror, he left with a heavy heart, murmuring, "Albus, you were wrong. That boy, he should have been king." When John and Ariana arrived to meet Mrs. Wick, she was brimming with excitement, eager to have Ariana try on an array of clothes. Ariana sought John's help with pleading eyes, but he merely turned his head, offering no rescue. By the end of the day, Mrs. Wick had amassed a collection of novel wizarding attire, marking a successful outing. Upon their return to Hogwarts, they encountered Slughorn. His confusion on it seeing Mrs. Wick within the school's walls was evident, yet he greeted her with his usual enthusiasm. "Would you care to join me for a drink? The feast upstairs is somewhat lacking, but I can order something from the kitchen." Mrs. Wick glanced at her son, and with a knowing smile, John explained, "I'm sorry, Professor, but my mother is here to take my sister home." "Ah, I see," Slughorn replied, catching sight of Ariana. "Then I mustn't keep my guests waiting any longer." With that, he departed with a tactful grace. Mrs. Wick, puzzled, remarked, "I thought your headmaster was an elderly man with a white beard?" John chuckled, "Oh, he's retired. Now he's the janitor." With a flick of his wand, a door materialized in the wall beside him. He opened it, and after Mrs. Wick and Ariana entered, it closed behind them, vanishing as if it had never been. Emerging from the kitchen, Slughorn intended to discuss the blood curse paper with John, but found the corridor empty. Raising his glass with a bemused expression, he mused, "I must have had too much to drink," before finishing his wine with a hesitant gulp. Back at the Wick household, Mrs. Wick and Ariana were greeted by Watson, clad in wizard robes and lounging on the sofa. His tone was sour as he inquired about their whereabouts. Mrs. Wick, maintaining her composure, gently reminded him, "Didn't we agree not to bring snow onto the carpet?" Watson glanced at the carpet, silently corrected his posture, and sat up straight, a picture of propriety. "I think," he began, only to be cut off. "I don't want to hear what you think. I want you to act," Mrs. Wick interjected, her words echoing a famous quote. Without further discussion, Watson obediently went outside to shovel snow. That evening, Watson discovered the wizard's robe Mrs. Wick had brought him. Overwhelmed with gratitude, he rushed to his room, murmuring, "My dear, you still love me. No need for words. I understand everything. Thank you for preparing my Christmas present." Unbeknownst to him, the robe was part of a buy 10, get 1 free deal. In her room, Ariana played with an emerald green brooch, rolling around on her bed in delight, with Little Bear mimicking her movements. Mrs. Wick entered to find Ariana asleep, a tender smile on her lips as she tucked her in. Ariana's playful nature endeared her even more to those around her. Beneath the Wick's Christmas tree lay an unopened present. Watson picked it up, noting the name Albus Dumbledore inscribed on it. The name stirred something within him, prompting him to place the gift in Ariana's room. Despite John's opinions on her older brother, the Wicks never intended for Ariana to forsake her past. "Treasure your family, Ariana," Watson whispered, placing the gift beside her. "I wish you were my daughter, and I wish for your happiness forever." He gently adjusted the bear to prevent it from falling, then tiptoed out of the room, leaving it in silence. After a moment, Ariana opened her eyes, glanced at the gift, and closed them again, still clutching the brooch tightly in her hand. Chapter 606, The End of the Holiday and the Death of Grindelwald. The headline dominating the center of the Daily Prophet read, "The Death of Grindelwald." A name that had surged into the public eye caught John's attention. "Inge Griffiths?" he mused, staring at the newspaper. He had previously mentioned that the Grindelwald issue needed a permanent resolution. It seemed someone had taken that to heart. "Grindelwald is dead?" Skepticism laced his voice. Could such a formidable figure have been so easily vanquished? The once dreaded Dark Lord of Europe, defeated in a minor country by a minister of magic? John picked up a letter from Riddle, noting the signature of old Barty. Like John, Barty Crouch Sr. harbored doubts about Grindelwald's demise. "Lippy has confirmed it's not a polyjuice potion," John mused, trusting in Lippy's expertise. Those capable of infiltrating the Dark Lord's ranks possessed exceptional skills. Yet, if not Polyjuice, what could have masqueraded as Grindelwald? John pondered the deeper story behind the supposed death. He decided to have his elite disciples delve into the matter. The photograph accompanying the article showed a man standing defiantly before international representatives, a stark contrast to the expected. Ingi Griffiths, John repeated the name, an unknown until Grindelwald's purported visit thrust him into the limelight. Dumbledore won't believe this either. What will he do? John handed the letter to Riddle, instructing him to visit Johnny Silverhands, then made his way to the Star Club. Upon entering, he witnessed a fierce duel between two divine guards, Hector and Hermer. Each clash sent shockwaves through the air, much to the delight of the watching Protoss. Silver John, radiating a silver-white glow, stood nearby. With a snap of his fingers, John halted the battle, and the guards reverted to their Protoss forms, rushing over. Under John's tutelage, they had mastered the ability to switch between forms. The transformation of dozens of Protoss into divine guards was a sight to behold, a formidable force at John's command. "You've become like an army," John observed with a slight smile, selecting two for deployment to the French and American branches as a precaution. The chosen guards, reverting to their Protoss forms, leaped joyfully. John addressed the remaining Protoss, promising them future opportunities to serve as guardians across the globe. This gave them a sense of purpose, fulfilling the protective role John had envisioned for them. In the American branch, Nagini welcomed the little Protoss with a warm smile. "Hello," she greeted. The Protoss responded in its unique language, which John translated, revealing his deep connection with his creations. Nagini's admiration for John was evident as they discussed Credence's whereabouts and the care of the branch. Meanwhile, in France, the atmosphere was celebratory, with Grindelwald's death being the cause. John learned of Grindelwald's prior destruction of the Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris, a deed he calmly denounced, despite his own involvement in the chaos. The holiday concluded with John's intensive training and review sessions. Students, including Daphne, returned to school, eager to reconnect with friends and continue their studies. Daphne, in particular, sought out Malfoy, while her well-trained Protoss displayed remarkable discipline and learning. The changing of the guards was an event that drew attention, especially when Astoria brought the Protoss guards. For some inexplicable reason, Neville's Protoss guards appeared more formidable. Malfoy, arriving fashionably late, seemed resigned to his fate, knowing well that Daphne was likely to confront him. The Protoss he had trained, however, became the center of attention as it strutted into the group with an air of arrogance, drawing the ire of the others. The Protoss, incessantly taunting, managed to incite a chase, turning the scene into a chaotic pursuit as even the usually composed Protoss chosen by John, named Hector, joined in. The spectacle escalated until he Protoss, overwhelmed, reverted to its original state, necessitating John's intervention. Recognizing the Protoss's unique ability to stir its peers, John decided to name it Xiaolong and placed it on a table, ensuring its safety from the others. Meanwhile, Malfoy found himself in a precarious position, suspended upside down under Daphne's intense scrutiny. Astoria, feeling somewhat responsible for her sister's actions, watched on with guilt. Despite his predicament, Malfoy remained defiant, his silence not born from pride, but from a spell that sealed his voice. It was only after John dispelled the magic that Malfoy's pleas for help emerged, though John dismissed his hopes for salvation. The following day, John visited Professor Slughorn's office, presenting a breakthrough in the treatment of blood curses. Slughorn, astounded, predicted that John would become the greatest potions master in history, suggesting that his discovery warranted an Order of Merlin. John, however, remained focused on the limitations of his solution, aware that its effectiveness was unique to his skills. The conversation shifted to Barty Crouch Sr.'s efforts to promote werewolf equality, with Slughorn suggesting that John's potion could bolster Crouch's campaign. Determined to prioritize Astoria's treatment, John prepared to move his operations to the Club of Stars. Daphne, concerned for her sister, sought reassurance from John, who promised Astoria's safety. With Daphne's worries eased, she observed Astoria, who seemed carefree as she interacted with Malfoy, indicating a shift in her concerns. This narrative, cleaned from its original machine-translated state, now flows more coherently, offering a clearer insight into the character's motivations and the plot's progression. Chapter 607, Star Club Holiday, A Time of Harvest. The holiday season had come to an end, but for the students gathered in the auditorium, it wasn't truly over until they shared their experiences. Conversations buzzed with tales of travels and encounters, each story marking the official conclusion of their vacation. Malfoy eyed the freshly made potato cakes with suspicion. "Did the kitchen change the recipe?" he asked, puzzled. "It seems so," Brace replied, taking a hearty bite and marveling at the difference. "My family spent Christmas in Norway. The wizards there were incredibly hospitable," he shared with a smile, prompting other Slytherins to chime in with their own amusing and intriguing holiday tales. The Star Club, however, was noticeably quieter. Anyone paying attention could tell that Malfoy's silence was due to a less than successful holiday, but not everyone was so observant. Crabbe, lacking in subtlety, turned to Malfoy and asked, "Draco, did you visit France? What was interesting there?" Both Malfoy and Astoria fell silent at the question. John glanced at the couple, knowing they had ventured to romantic Paris together, only to face a series of unfortunate events. With a sigh, Malfoy responded bitterly, "I was robbed." Crabbe, confused, asked, "What?" "I said I was robbed, you idiot," Malfoy snapped, frustration evident. His dream of a romantic getaway in Paris had quickly turned sour upon their arrival. Not only was his money stolen, but he was also deceived by someone pretending to offer help, leading them into a dead end. In a desperate attempt to recover their belongings, Malfoy had to chase the thief for 3,000 meters and resort to using magic to subdue him, only to find their money gone. The young couple's vacation had nearly ended, with them stranded on the streets of Paris. Even John couldn't help but feel sympathy after hearing their ordeal. "How did you manage to return?" Crabbe asked, eyes wide with curiosity. Malfoy's return was facilitated by contacting his only acquaintance in France, a detail that left Heinrich unimpressed, but had Jin struggling to contain his laughter. If it weren't for the seriousness of the situation, Malfoy would have gladly challenged Jin to a duel. The conversation shifted as Panksy, without thinking, asked Daphne about her holiday. Daphne, setting down her fork, replied nonchalantly, "I went to a Muggle restaurant in Chelsea to learn cooking." Pansy, sensing a mismatch between Daphne's culinary skills and her choice of learning venue, quickly excused herself and Theodore from the conversation. However, Daphne's grip on Pansy's hand stopped her in her tracks, a cold sweat breaking out as Daphne spoke with robotic precision. "The head chef of that restaurant is quite renowned, and his culinary skills are exceptional," Daphne explained. "Chef Ramsay was initially pleased to teach me." What followed was a recounting of an experience even more harrowing than Malfoy's. Chef Ramsay, initially charmed by the prospect of teaching a passionate young woman, quickly became disillusioned. "What are you doing? Remove that abomination," he had barked. "I now realize you're a natural disaster in the kitchen, mistaking trash for cuisine," he lamented. "Have you lost your sense of taste? I'm certain any random elderly woman in Mexico could outcook you," he continued, his frustration mounting. "Please, just leave. Don't bring that monstrosity near me again," he pleaded. "Oh God, why didn't you just end my misery?" he groaned. "If I had to consume your cooking, I'd rather sever my own tongue," he declared, exasperated. "Please, I beg you, leave me be. Take the restaurant if you must," he offered in desperation. Initially, Ramsay had seen Daphne as a beautiful aspiring chef with a genuine passion and some basic skills. However, her time in the kitchen quickly revealed a profound lack of culinary talent, turning Ramsay's initial impression into one of utter dismay. "Is this a punishment from the gods? If I am guilty, let me face hell rather than endure this torment." He didn't even identify what he was attempting to cook. In desperation, he pleaded with Daphne to show mercy. "You need to forget everything you've learned about cooking," Ramsay advised, heading towards the kitchen with a sense of purpose. He believed this was a trial, a challenge posed by fate to test the courageous. Ramsay declared with conviction, "Your culinary creations do not belong in this realm, nor in any other." Daphne, puzzled, responded, "But this is traditional Oriental cuisine. There's nothing traditional about combining pearls with chocolate." Ramsay retorted, his frustration evident. Realizing he had lost his temper, he took a moment to compose himself, taking several deep breaths. "Miss Greengrass, try to see things from a common-sense perspective," he suggested. He presented a dish of freshly Jamaican smoked chicken, pointing to it as he explained, "This is what we call food." Then, gesturing towards Daphne's dish, he added, "And this, I apologize for my harsh words, but this is what we call kitchen waste." Chef Ramsay's blunt critique made Daphne aware of her culinary shortcomings, a realization that came from her extensive travels with Chelsea. Pansy, witnessing the scene, was sweating profusely, her right hand turning purple from poor circulation. Despite her desire to flee, Daphne's formidable presence rendered her powerless. Upon hearing the unfortunate tale, John remained silent. Malfoy, on the other hand, expressed relief. "It seems you finally recognized your culinary attempts as utter garbage." Pansy whimpered in pain, fearing her hand might break. However, Malfoy continued to revel in his ability to mock, suggesting, "Perhaps cooking isn't your calling. You might have a future as a curse master, given that your dishes are more horrifying than any curse." Following that day, Malfoy's memory was hazy. He only recalled it as a near-death experience, having visions of his ancestor, Amanda Malfoy, who had arrived in England with William the Conqueror. According to incomplete records from Slytherin, Daphne had unleashed at least 10 different curses on him, including the Wasp Curse, the Hair Curse, and the Big Toe Curse. When Ms. Pomfrey first saw Malfoy, she mistook him for a new species of magical creature. Malfoy spent a day and a night in the school hospital, awakening to sporadic convulsions. Few at Hogwarts sympathized with him, except perhaps Astoria. Despite Daphne's furious onslaught, she refrained from using any curses that would cause lasting harm to Malfoy. The effects of her curses were temporary and non-lethal. Following her disastrous foray into cooking, Daphne seldom ventured into the kitchen. "Neville, what's happened to you?" Hannah exclaimed in panic, as Neville was rushed out for medical attention. Fearing the worst, Hannah lamented, "I tried the recipe." John inspected the lunchbox and recognized the chocolate sausage roll, realizing not everyone had the skill to manage such culinary experiments. Shaking his head, he noted Neville's inexperience. At the Star Club, John prepared for Astoria's treatment, which involved addressing the 3rd or 4th curse outbreak. Without knowing the exact number of curses afflicting her, he gathered a soul potion and sufficient repair fluid, ready to begin treatment on the first Sunday after the holidays. In preparation, John closed 2 books he had been studying, each covering a wide range of topics from spells to celestial movements and from time to prophecy. The depth of knowledge in these books, especially the one from Ravenclaw, was vast, offering insights far beyond those found in the dark God book. John stepped out of the plain room, feeling the need to rest for a while. Engaging his mind so intensely for an extended period had also taxed his body. As he left the Star Club, he found himself in the corridor on the 1st floor. A figure hurried past him, causing John to pause in surprise. "Harry?" he called out, recognizing the other person. It was indeed Harry Potter, who appeared to be on his way out of the castle. Owen's surprise stemmed from the timing. It was unusual for Harry to be leaving the castle at this hour. Curiosity piqued, he quickened his pace to catch up. "Harry, where are you off to at this time?" he asked, his tone laced with concern and curiosity. Harry slowed down, turning to face John with a mixture of hesitation and resolve in his eyes. "I've got something important to take care of," he replied, his voice carrying a weight that suggested the gravity of his task. John could sense the seriousness in Harry's demeanor, and he knew better than to probe too deeply into matters that Harry chose to keep close to his chest. However, as a friend, he couldn't help but offer his support. "Do you need any help with it?" he inquired, ready to stand by Harry's side. Harry considered the offer for a moment, the internal struggle evident on his face. Finally, he shook his head. "Thanks, John, but this is something I need to do on my own," he said, a determined glint in his eyes. Respecting Harry's decision, John nodded, clapping him on the shoulder in a gesture of solidarity. "All right, but remember, if you need anything, I'm here for you," he assured Harry, wanting to make sure his friend knew he wasn't alone. Harry offered a small, grateful smile. "I will. Thanks, John," he said before turning to continue on his path, leaving John standing in the corridor, watching after him with a mix of worry and admiration. As Harry's figure disappeared from view, John couldn't shake off the feeling of unease that settled in his chest. He knew Harry was capable and had faced more than his fair share of challenges, but the unknown nature of Harry's current endeavor left John feeling unsettled. With a heavy sigh, he decided to head back, hoping that whatever Harry was facing, he would emerge unscathed. The castle's corridors were quiet, a stark contrast to the turmoil of thoughts racing through John's mind. He couldn't help but wonder about the challenges that lay ahead for Harry and whether there was more he could do to support his friend. As he made his way back to his room, John resolved to stay alert and ready to lend a hand should Harry need it. The bonds of friendship, after all, were not easily broken, and he was determined to stand by Harry, no matter what the future held. Chapter 608. Harry's Mentor. Xiao Zhao. Harry had never imagined that he would receive personal instruction from Dumbledore. Although Dumbledore had guided him in the past, he rarely intervened directly in teaching spells and magical skills. In fact, Harry had learned more about magic from Snape than from Dumbledore. This new development filled him with excitement. Being recognized by Dumbledore in this way was a source of pride for Harry, surpassing even his outstanding results in the OWL exams. He looked again at the note in his hand, which read, "Meet in front of Hagrid's cabin at 8:30 p.m. Harry wondered why Dumbledore had chosen Hagrid's hut as their meeting place. Nonetheless, trusting Dumbledore's judgment, he donned his invisibility cloak and set off before 8:30 p.m. As a seventh-year student, Harry had grown significantly taller. The invisibility cloak, which once easily hid him and his friends, now barely covered him alone. Feeling a mix of nervousness and anticipation, Harry made his way to Hagrid's hut. Upon arrival, he overheard a conversation inside. "A bit more tea, Dumbledore?" Hagrid offered. "No, thank you, Hagrid. This armor is quite comfortable," Dumbledore replied. The door then opened, revealing Dumbledore, who announced, "It's time for me to leave." "We haven't seen much of each other recently," Hagrid remarked as he escorted Dumbledore out. Inside, the kettle on the fireplace blazed with a golden flame, which Hagrid quickly tended to with pokers. Once outside, Dumbledore addressed the seemingly empty air. "We're going to change locations, Harry." Harry removed his invisibility cloak, revealing himself, and asked, "Where are we going?" "The Forbidden Forest," Dumbledore answered, pointing towards the dark expanse. "There's a place there where you can learn something valuable." Curious, Harry hurried to keep up with Dumbledore's pace. "But why not go to the castle? Like before, we could find a classroom." "The classroom is too confining," Dumbledore explained without slowing his stride. "We need to make haste so you have ample time to learn." Harry was puzzled by Dumbledore's urgency and the mention of time. As they ventured into the Forbidden Forest, the darkness enveloped them, prompting Harry to light his wand. Dumbledore initiated a conversation, suggesting, "I believe you should read the newspapers in your spare time." "Yes, sir," Harry responded. "Many significant events have occurred recently," Dumbledore noted, his voice carrying a hint of emotion. Harry nodded. "Yes, it's Grindelwald. He's dead." The year 1997 had been eventful, with Voldemort's demise at Hogwarts and Grindelwald's death in Poland. Dumbledore seemed momentarily affected by the mention of Grindelwald's name. "Yes, he's dead," he acknowledged, then quickly shifted the topic. "Do you believe he's truly dead?" Harry was taken aback. He hadn't given much thought to Grindelwald, whose influence was minimal in the UK compared to the rest of Europe. Dumbledore's question implied there was more to consider. After a moment of reflection, Harry replied uncertainly, "The newspapers all say." "Sometimes the truth isn't what's written in the newspapers," Dumbledore interjected. "The Grindelwald I knew wouldn't be easily defeated during an arrest." "You mean Grindelwald might still be alive?" Harry's eyes widened in shock. Dumbledore didn't respond directly. Instead, he gestured towards a glowing area ahead. "We're almost there." Navigating through the forest, they arrived at a clearing illuminated by a soft, dreamlike glow. "What is this place?" Harry inquired, mesmerized by the sight. "I discovered this place during my time as a student at Hogwarts," Dumbledore revealed, walking towards the center of the clearing. "I've named it the Firefly Grassland." As they stepped onto the grass, tiny points of light floated up around them. Harry was astonished by the beauty of the scene. I've never seen anything like this before. There is much knowledge to be discovered beyond the confines of books, Harry, Dumbledore said as they settled on an oval-shaped rock. Our journey is one of constant exploration into the unknown. The source of a wizard's magic, he pointed to Harry's heart, lies here. The stronger the heart, the more potent the magic. The stronger the magic, the more it is influenced by love. Dumbledore began, setting the tone for the semester. Here, I can't teach you the most powerful spells, Harry. Magic's effectiveness varies with the user's strength. You must learn to control your power. Can I tell Ron and Hermione about what's happening here? Harry was reluctant to keep secrets from his friends. You may, Dumbledore responded kindly. Harry had another question that had been lingering in his mind. Dumbledore, why me? It was a question he had asked before. Previously, Dumbledore had told him it was because he possessed love. This time, Dumbledore's answer was the same. Harry, you possess something unique. You have love. But I'm not the savior, Harry protested. John defeated Voldemort. John has his strengths and doesn't need others' help. You, Harry, are different, Dumbledore explained. Is it because I'm weak? Harry asked, a hint of frustration in his voice. Dumbledore did not deny it, but instead offered a perspective. You need a goal, and striving to match John could be it. That's impossible. I'll never be as good as him, Harry admitted, aware of his limitations. That's precisely why you're here, Dumbledore said earnestly. John will continue to grow and might make mistakes. Someone needs to be there to rectify those mistakes. Dumbledore made it clear that Harry was to inherit his responsibilities and work towards maintaining peace in the magical world. And it's not just me who will train you, Harry. Others. Who else? Harry was curious about who else would be involved in his training. You'll find out in time, Dumbledore said with a mysterious smile. The day's first lesson was Transfiguration. Instead of teaching spells, Dumbledore shared his insights on the art of transformation. Harry's skills in Transfiguration were modest at best, certainly not on par with Hermione's. However, his natural aptitude for defense against the dark arts was undeniable, having excelled despite the varied quality of professors over the years. Transfiguration is a critical skill, indicative of a wizard's prowess. Before I became headmaster, I taught both Transfiguration and defense against the dark arts. I'm quite familiar with these subjects, Dumbledore shared. Towards the end of the lesson, Harry asked, why can John transform into a dragon? That's exceedingly rare, Dumbledore explained. In the case of animagi, most transform into ordinary animals, similar to the nature of Patronuses. With a wave of his wand, Dumbledore conjured a silver phoenix, demonstrating the concept. While most Patronuses take the form of an animal, there are exceptions. The silver phoenix, a manifestation of Dumbledore's Patronus, was a sight to behold, radiating power and grace before vanishing. Our lesson must end here for today, Dumbledore concluded. Harry, realizing the time, hurried off to avoid Snape's infamous glare in the next day's potions class. After Harry's departure, Snape appeared. Do you truly believe he's capable? He asked Dumbledore. Dumbledore shook his head, expressing concern over John's increasingly elusive new magic. I'd like you to take over Harry's occlumency lesson, Severus. I will consider it, Snape replied before turning to leave. Chapter 609, Healing and the 3 stages of curse outbreak preparations were complete, with only the arrival of Sunday pending. Astoria spent these days close to her older sister Daphne, her mood fluctuating due to the impending treatment. Malfoy, puzzled by Astoria's recent distance, couldn't help but feel dejected. Do you think she hates me? He asked, his voice tinged with melancholy. John, attempting to offer comfort, clapped him on the shoulder. Don't worry, it's not that she hates you. She just prefers not to be around you at the moment. Malfoy's expression darkened. Isn't that the same as being hated? He muttered, retreating into his thoughts. John's attempt at consolation seemed to have backfired, leaving Malfoy even more disheartened. John, realizing his words might have been misinterpreted, tried to clarify. What I meant was, she needs space during this time. It's not personal. Malfoy, however, was not in the mood for further discussion. Enough said, I understand, he said, a hint of bitterness in his tone as he walked away, leaving John to ponder his friend's deepening sense of loss. Astoria, meanwhile, was grappling with fear. Daphne, believing in honesty, had explained the full gravity of the curse afflicting her sister. "I'll be fine, right?" Astoria asked, seeking reassurance. Daphne embraced her, offering a comforting smile. "With John handling it, you'll be fine. I promise," she said, trying to alleviate her sister's fears. However, when the topic of informing Malfoy arose, Astoria was adamant about keeping him in the dark. "I don't want Draco to worry. It would only distract him, especially with Quidditch being so crucial this year," she explained, showing a mature understanding of her boyfriend's commitments. Daphne, stroking Astoria's hair, couldn't help but express her envy. "I still can't fathom why Draco has won your heart," she said. Half-jokingly, Astoria's response was filled with the warmth of genuine affection. "Perhaps it's love. I can't explain it either," she said, her eyes sparkling. This led to a moment of awkwardness for Daphne, who quickly shifted the conversation to John, noting his unique charm and gentleness, a stark contrast to his reputation in Slytherin. Daphne's fond memories of John, stemming from an incident involving Peeves, highlighted her growing affection for him. Astoria, observing her sister's demeanor, smiled knowingly. Despite her sister's feelings, Astoria understood that John's focus was more on magic and power than on love, a realization that made her worry about Daphne's chances of winning his heart. As Sunday night arrived, Astoria, trying to keep her nerves in check, walked hand in hand with Daphne into the Star Club, where they were greeted by a lineup of Protoss. Among them, Astoria recognized her Protoss companion from vacation, its distinctive vertical golden hair making it stand out. The Protoss's affectionate greeting brought a smile to Astoria's face. John, observing the interaction, commented on the Protoss's ability to develop unique traits the longer they stayed with humans. This observation was demonstrated by the Protoss dragon, which commanded attention and respect from the others. The scene set the stage for a night of significant events, with the bonds between humans and Protoss highlighting the deep connections formed beyond the realm of magic. John stood before them, his chest heaving as if burdened by an immense weight. "Is this Draco's?" Daphne instantly recognized the creature. John nodded, a look of helplessness in his eyes. "It's not very popular with the others right now." Only he seemed to understand the Protoss's language. "You nameless trash, did you hear me? The creator himself gave me a name." The Protoss, named Xiaolong, boasted arrogantly, looking down on the others with disdain. "Enough," John cut off Xiaolong's tirade, turning to the two sisters. "Everything's ready. Let's proceed." He opened a door, bowing slightly as he gestured for them to enter. "After you, ladies." "Of course, sir," Daphne replied without a smile, stepping inside. Astoria hesitated, not wanting to part with the Protoss, which seemed to have grown attached to her. Noticing her reluctance, John reassured her with a smile. "It's all right to bring it along. It might be of help." Astoria's face lit up with happiness as she led the Protoss through the door. They found themselves not in Dragon Valley, but on an isolated island surrounded by water under a star-filled sky. The island was set up with crucibles and potions ready for use. John handed a potion to Astoria, his tone serious. "This will save your life." "Thank you, John," Astoria replied, trusting him completely. The Star Society knew John well. He was a man of his word. After drinking the potion, Astoria felt no different, much like Daphne had earlier. "Next, you need to touch the book," John instructed, levitating the Book of Darkness towards her. He drew his wand, prepared for any outcome. As soon as Astoria touched the book, she lost consciousness. John acted swiftly, levitating her body as a wave of dark energy erupted from her, disturbing the calm waters around them. John's right hand glowed silver as he directed a wave of his wand, summoning thousands of soul scalpels towards Astoria. Now a level 7 mage, John handled the magic with ease, his power suppressing the curse within Astoria, preventing it from escaping. With another wave of his wand, a second potion flowed into Astoria, protecting her brain. John could see the curse lodged deep within her, more severe than Daphne's. While Daphne's condition was latent, Astoria's was a ticking time bomb, set to detonate in adulthood. The soul scalpels worked meticulously, cutting and clearing the curse from Astoria's soul, though her body suffered damage. John used the water prison curse to envelop her in a healing fluid, a process no less challenging than Daphne's treatment, his expression grave. "It's more serious than I anticipated," John admitted, increasing the intensity of his efforts as he summoned more soul scalpels. They moved through Astoria's soul, each strike removing a portion of the curse, the healing fluid quickly repairing the physical damage. This battle against the curse was prolonged and arduous. Just when it seemed cornered, the curse's second, more potent wave erupted, spreading rapidly across Astoria's body like a compressed ball suddenly released. John intensified his efforts, the soul scalpels moving at a speed that made them nearly invisible to Daphne. To her, they appeared as a whirlwind of silver threads, dancing wildly through Astoria's body, cutting, stitching, and healing in a continuous cycle, focusing on the last vestige of the curse near the heart. Daphne, her consciousness still not fully returned, held her breath as John concentrated the soul scalpels, aiming for a decisive strike at the heart. In that moment, Astoria's soul was engulfed in darkness, the curse moving faster than the soul scalpels, threatening to destroy her body in an instant. John took a deep breath, preparing for the final confrontation. The outbreak was even more terrifying than anticipated. However, John was not without resources. A silver light flickered in his eyes, and suddenly, time seemed to slow down around him. He observed the darkness gradually enveloping Astoria, its sinister tendrils reaching for her. This was the divine speed, a unique ability derived from the Zou's bloodline. It wasn't limited to mere physical movement, but extended to an enhanced perception of events, making everything appear as if in slow motion. With heightened awareness, John's pupils dilated, allowing him to see with unprecedented clarity. To Daphne, it appeared as though the soul scalpel in John's hand transformed into a curtain of light. Astoria's body, on the brink of collapse, began to heal instantaneously. The dark curse, which had threatened to consume her entirely, lasted for a mere 3 seconds before it was completely eradicated. John, with a focused intensity, directed the curse into his own abdomen, containing it within himself. A silver aura emanated from John's body as he, seizing the moment, reached out and extracted the curse with a swift, decisive motion. The water sphere that had encapsulated the procedure shattered, and Astoria, now freed from her affliction, collapsed to the ground, exhausted but alive. The surgery was a success. This moment of triumph was marked by a palpable sense of relief. John's quick thinking and mastery over his unique abilities had turned the tide, showcasing not only his profound magical prowess, but also his deep commitment to saving Astoria. The darkness that had loomed so threateningly was dispelled, leaving behind a testament to the power of determination and skill. Chapter 610, Slughorn's Connections and Published Papers. As his pupils returned to their normal size, John observed the Protoss scurrying below, eventually being subdued by Astoria. He remained silent, questioning internally if they had forgotten their ability to transform. The Protoss peeked out with difficulty, while Daphne rushed over to assist her sister, her voice laced with concern. "What's happened?" John gently stroked Astoria's form, a sense of relief washing over him as he announced, "The curse has been lifted." After ensuring the curse was thoroughly eradicated, he added, "But she'll need some time to rest." Daphne exhaled a sigh of relief, embracing Astoria tightly. "It's going to be okay." Nearby, the Protoss leaped joyously. John offered a small smile, then made his way back to the Star Club, trailed by a procession of Protoss chasing after a dragon. The dragon glanced back, clearly disgruntled, likely harboring unkind words, a behavior John attributed to Draco's influence with a sigh. In the club, Hector fetched a pen and Hermer hauled parchment onto the table. John began to document his treatment process, his understanding of the blood curse deepening. He realized it behaved more like a parasitic entity within the human body, spreading through reproduction to perpetuate itself. The blood curse acts as a limiter, John mused. Once removed, it temporarily boosts magical power due to the body's sudden freedom from its constraints. In the headmaster's office, Slughorn perused the detailed parchment, marveling, "This is a revolutionary perspective, John. You're a genius." John shrugged off the compliment. "That's hardly news to me." Slughorn was ecstatic about the resolution of the bloodborne curse, recognizing the curse's usual association with malevolence and the tragic fate of those born into it. John's insight revealed that the curse, once lifted, allowed the body to absorb magic more efficiently, turning a curse into an unexpected blessing. This discovery isn't just about lifting a curse, it's about saving lives, Slughorn said, his respect evident as he stood and bowed to John, a gesture of homage from one potion master to another. After the formalities, Slughorn, slightly embarrassed, hinted at his desire to share in the discovery's acclaim. John, understanding his intentions, assured him this is a joint achievement. Slughorn, overjoyed, expressed regret over his retirement, wishing he could have been John's teacher. John, however, felt grateful for his own mentor, Nicholas Flamel, acknowledging him as the greatest alchemist. With the matter resolved, Slughorn promised to publish their findings promptly, his enthusiasm reminiscent of John's other mentor, Dharma Alex, highlighting the similarity between master and apprentice. John then visited Astoria in the school hospital. Despite the curse's removal, she faced a period of convalescence, with Daphne experiencing a milder form of recovery. Astoria's condition necessitated at least a week's stay in the hospital, a fact that Malfoy, upon learning of the events, regretted deeply for not realizing sooner. Beside Astoria's bed, Malfoy lamented his slow response, to which Astoria, though pale, offered a weak smile, reassuring him, "I didn't want you to worry." "Draco," Malfoy whispered, holding her hand with a gentleness that was rare for him. Even Daphne, who had never been fond of Malfoy, found herself unable to interrupt. His unexpected tenderness revealed to her the reason her sister was drawn to him. However, Malfoy's words carried a somber tone, as if he were facing his own demise, which deeply troubled Daphne. "She's merely hospitalized," John interjected, his tone laced with disbelief as he observed Malfoy's affectionate display. "Consider this a blessing in disguise for Astoria. Her magical power is likely to increase, and you, Malfoy, might finally earn your place without question." Malfoy, previously lost in his tender moment, bristled at the mention of his status. "John, do you know any curses that could—" "I'm familiar with lay. Avada Kedavra, if that's what you're suggesting," John replied dryly. Malfoy hesitated, then conceded. Indeed, Avada Kedavra was a curse, and a deadly one at that. Faced with the reality of his situation, Malfoy resolved to work harder, starting with morning exercises the very next day. There, he encountered Neville, who had become reclusive after facing rejection twice. Professor Slughorn's efficiency was unparalleled, a testament to the extensive network of the current Hogwarts headmaster. In the Wizengamot jury, half of the members had ties to the professor, either as former students or friends. The groundbreaking paper on the blood curse was published in major academic journals within a week, hailed by some as the century's last miracle. The curse, prevalent among ancient families, had been a death sentence for many newborns born into such lineages. Yet there were exceptions, and John Wick's name became synonymous with hope. Slughorn's involvement was noted, but it was clear that the headmaster had triumphed once again. Dharma Alex watched with envy. "I should have pursued that position from the start," he lamented, recognizing that his chances had been slim, but not impossible, had he dedicated himself to the pursuit. Now, he could only watch as John was poised to receive another Merlin medal, while his former teacher reaped accolades with ease. The pursuit of honor was a trap from which many Slytherins, including himself, struggled to escape. Slughorn's success, especially his inclusion on a chocolate frog card following the Battle of Hogwarts, and now this, sparked envy among his peers. Following the publication of the paper, John received numerous letters inquiring about the blood curse limiter. Many purebloods were intrigued by the potential for the curse to enhance their abilities. John, however, dismissed these notions with a scoff, burning the letters. Without his unique soul surgery, the curse would have been fatal. The ruby potion, another of John's creations, offered a means to mitigate the effects of the blood curse, providing hope for those afflicted. As the paper's implications continued to ripple through the wizarding world, a potion master raised a question that shifted the entire discourse. If the blood curse can be lifted, what about the curse of lycanthropy? This query sparked widespread debate, drawing attention from beyond the professional community to the public at large. The possibility of extending this breakthrough to werewolves opened new avenues of hope and discussion, marking a pivotal moment in magical medicine and society. Chapter 611, The Werewolf Savior. A sensation across all societies. The question of whether werewolves are human or humanoid has sparked debate ever since their inception. Originating from wizards through a curse, werewolves transform uncontrollably into beasts, reminiscent of a wizard's transfiguration gone awry that resulted in a five-legged monster. With the recent establishment of a werewolf community and the election of werewolf counselors, this topic has heated up. The distinction between being considered the same race as humans or merely magical creatures with human intelligence is significant. Historically, killing a magical creature was not punishable, as some pure-blood families advocated. The majority view werewolves as humanoid, despite the availability of wolfsbane potion, which curbs their bloodthirsty tendencies during a full moon. Their contagious nature still causes widespread apprehension. However, the possibility of a cure has recently emerged, challenging the perception of werewolves as mere magical creatures. Headlines such as "The Werewolf Bill Reintroduced," "Are Werewolves Men or Wolves?" and "Is He the Third-Generation Dark Lord or the Savior?" have sparked widespread discussion. The focus is on John Wick, dubbed the Werewolf Savior, whose intentions are being debated. John Wick tasked Tang Mi with handling the publication of a groundbreaking dissertation. With Professor Slughorn's endorsement, the paper quickly circulated worldwide, stirring debate among potion masters. According to the research, if the curse can be eradicated, werewolves could potentially revert to their human state. Although some skepticism exists, the paper's credibility is bolstered by endorsements from authoritative experts. Is it really possible? A curious Hogwarts student inquired, unable to contain his excitement at the revolutionary idea. "Read more papers, idiot," Draco Malfoy retorted disdainfully. "Don't ask about everything. If John had to answer every question, he'd be exhausted." The Hufflepuff student left, embarrassed by Malfoy's rebuke. "I've never felt as safe as I do now, Draco," John said, clapping Malfoy on the shoulder, a gesture that left Malfoy pondering John's implication about his previous sense of security. John realized the impracticality of personally curing all werewolves. His goal was to accelerate their societal integration. Achieving equality would enable werewolves to work alongside wizards, gradually assimilating back into wizarding society. Historically, the animosity between wizards and werewolves, fueled by extremists like Fenrir Greyback, necessitated a more inclusive world to prevent rebellion and reduce harm. However, convincing proud wizards to accept werewolves as equals posed a significant challenge. "Difficulties are not to be feared, but despair is more to be feared than difficulties," John mused, recognizing the opportunity presented by current events in the wizarding world. Grindelwald's death, elections for the International Confederation of Wizards, and the upheaval of the sacred 28 races. These developments, particularly the influence gained by the Polish Minister of Magic, could sway a significant number of votes in favor of a more inclusive society. John's vision for a harmonious coexistence between wizards and werewolves was ambitious, yet he understood the importance of seizing this pivotal moment to advocate for change and equality. In a world where the allure of power often overshadows the essence of true leadership, the magical community found itself at a crossroads. The desire for a leader who could embody greatness and inspire the masses had never been more pronounced. Ingi Griffiths emerged as the embodiment of such aspirations. His heroic deeds had positioned him as the prime candidate for the presidency of the International Federation of Wizards. His unexpected candidacy turned the tide of public opinion, uniting the Polish Magical Society in an unprecedented manner. Their minister, hailed for his contributions, had become a beacon of hope. This shift in leadership seemed less like a mere change and more like a significant transformation, reminiscent of the time when Dumbledore, after defeating Grindelwald, ascended to the presidency. John, who had never personally met Inge, recognized the potential in leveraging this hero's image against Barty Crouch Sr., another contender for the position. With the initial excitement surrounding Barty Sr.'s campaign waning, John sought new strategies to bolster his standing. He turned his attention to the Holy 28, the oldest pure-blood families in Europe, whose alliance represented not only prestige but also significant political influence. The Crouch family, being part of this esteemed group, had a unique opportunity to champion the Werewolf Equalization Bill. Success in this endeavor would not only be a landmark achievement, but also a strategic move to gain favor among various factions within the Ministry of Magic, including those traditionally opposed to werewolves. John's plan was to manipulate the dynamics within the Holy 28 to ensure that Barty Sr. emerged with more leverage than any other candidate. When you have more chips than everyone else, then you can be the banker, John mused, his ambition clear. He understood that controlling a faction of the Holy 28 could significantly sway the entire alliance, and by extension, the election. Meanwhile, Barty Crouch Jr., disillusioned and estranged from his father, stumbled upon a Daily Prophet article detailing the election. The sight of his father, portrayed as a doting parent, was enough to stir a mix of contempt and indifference in him. When confronted by his father, who attempted to reminisce about happier times, Barty Jr. coldly dismissed the gesture as a mere political maneuver. He saw through his father's attempts to repaint the narrative of their family, recognizing it as a desperate bid for public sympathy and votes. Barty Jr.'s disdain for his father's ambition was palpable. He knew all too well the lengths to which his father would go to secure power, even if it meant disowning his own son. The irony of being labeled a war hero by the public, when in reality he was a convicted Death Eater, was not lost on him. Barty Jr. saw his father's campaign as nothing more than a facade, an attempt to cleanse the family name and secure a political victory. As the election drew nearer, the magical community remained divided, with each candidate representing vastly different visions for the future. The battle for power, entangled with personal vendettas and political maneuvering, promised to leave an indelible mark on the wizarding world. Mouth agape, little Barty eventually closed it and returned to the wooden house. He cast a fleeting glance at the Minister of Magic standing outside the door before firmly shutting it. The man outside was hailed as the most successful Minister of Magic in the past century, yet he was a dreadful father. Old Barty approached the door, gently set down the lemon snowflake pastry, and departed. In that moment, he bore no resemblance to the distinguished minister he was known to be. Little Barty lingered behind the door, aware that old Barty had left. His gaze shifted back to the mirror in the room. Despite his vehement denials, he couldn't ignore the resemblance he shared with Barty Sr. His stubble only added to his worn-out appearance. As he stared at the reflection that so closely mirrored that of his father, a surge of anger overtook him. In a fit of rage, he smashed the mirror with a punch. The shards sliced through his fist, and blood began to drip onto the floor. "I hate you, father," he whispered, the words heavy with a mix of resentment and sorrow. The room fell silent, save for the sound of his labored breathing and the soft patter of blood drops hitting the ground. The broken mirror lay in pieces, a stark reminder of the fractured relationship between father and son. In that moment, little Barty felt the weight of his lineage and the struggle to forge his own identity amidst the shadows of his father's legacy. Chapter 612, The Fermentation of Potential and the Rise of the Divine Protectors. The debate ignited by the recent publication shows no signs of abating, continuing to ferment and draw in a wider audience. Initially, support for werewolves was scant, but as time progressed, their numbers swelled. The werewolf community, open to wizards, began to change public perception through acts of kindness, challenging the belief that their ferocity was innate rather than a curse-inflicted trait. Eyewitness accounts played a pivotal role in reshaping views. One individual recounted being saved by a werewolf, while another shared his positive experiences within the werewolf community, noting it as more welcoming than many wizarding societies. These stories began to erode the long-standing prejudices against werewolves. A former Auror statement, "Werewolves don't kill as many people as wizards do," struck a chord with many. This prompted a reevaluation of why werewolves were feared. Was it their potential for violence or their monstrous appearance? It became clear that werewolves, victims of a cruel curse, were often kind and friendly when not under its influence. Despite facing greater challenges and receiving meager compensation, they endeavored to live with dignity, often facing unwarranted hostility. The plight of the werewolves moved many to tears, while a pure-blood family publicly acknowledged their ancestors' role in the werewolves' tragic history. The discrimination faced by today's werewolves is a stark reminder of a darker time when they were hunted and ostracized without mercy. In the midst of this societal introspection, the Protoss Divine Guards continued their rigorous training. John, their leader, had strategically divided them into groups, each stationed in a different environment to harness unique abilities. In the rugged terrain, the Divine Guards honed their rock climbing skills and developed remarkable strength. Those in the ocean mastered water manipulation, pressure resistance, and swift underwater movement. The forest group gained rapid healing abilities and enhanced nocturnal mobility through starlight absorption. However, it was the Star Spirit Guard in Dragon Valley that stood out for their exceptional magical prowess and overall quality. John observed the transformative power of environment on strength, noting, "Being with something powerful makes you stronger." He watched as Hector, now a Divine Guard, used his newly formed horns to emit a laser strong enough to penetrate stone walls. Hermo, with agility and the ability to morph, demonstrated his skills by swiftly navigating obstacles and engaging in aerial combat with Hector. Their training session turned into a spirited duel, showcasing Hector's brute strength and Hermo's flexibility and cunning. Despite the intense competition, a protective spell prevented any real harm, and John intervened before things escalated further. As the Divine Guards reverted to their Protoss forms, a playful scuffle ensued, reflecting their unique personalities and the deep bond they shared. John mused on their development, recognizing that their evolving abilities were a testament to their adaptability and the profound influence of their surroundings. John stroked his chin, casting a sidelong glance. The Protoss named Xiaolong, hands on hips, towered with a sense of superiority over the other Protoss. It's worth noting that Xiaolong, despite being the least popular among the God Guards, boasted exceptional defense capabilities. Not even Hector's Star Strike, a powerful attack emanating from the horn of a Divine Guard resembling a laser infused with explosive and shattering magic, could bring him down. Xiaolong's unique ability to transform incoming magic into a shield, akin to a barrier, was the secret behind his ability to taunt other Protoss without harm. "I think you should stay with Draco," John suggested to Xiaolong, who showed obedience only to him as his creator, yet almost always attracted animosity otherwise, much like Malfoy. John had dispatched information about the Protoss to the two branches via letter, a move that was far from detrimental. The strength of the Protoss Guardians' leader set the ceiling for their magical power, which, under John's guidance, could potentially reach levels 6 or 7. The diversity and terrifying potential of this race stemmed from their varied evolutionary traits. The pressing question, however, was whether the Protoss Guardians possessed the ability to reproduce. If they can reproduce, they could even arm the entire magical world, John mused, a notion that stirred an odd sensation within him. The prospect of controlling the entire magical world was tantalizing yet premature. The guardianship of the Protoss needed to proliferate throughout the Silver Hand. Tang Mi had sent a letter, which Basil delivered to the Star Club's doorstep. Upon opening it, John found it concerned the investigation of Star apprentices. "Is it difficult for Star disciples to gain entry?" John pondered, his brow furrowing. The Polish Minister of Magic was no ordinary figure, having garnered the support of the entire Polish magical community. It was unsurprising that Grindelwald's followers were in Poland. In fact, it would be more surprising if they weren't, given their belief that Grindelwald died there. The potential for retaliation by these zealots was precisely why Grimm, the head of the Polish Magical Law Enforcement Department, opposed Inger's arrest. With Grindelwald in Poland, his followers would persist, posing a threat of terrorist attacks to the already fragile magical society. However, the Polish Minister of Magic seemed to have a plan, as there had been no news of the Saints since their arrival in Poland, whether they were lying low or had been captured. But it was clear they weren't merely having a peaceful tea. An invisible storm was brewing in that troubled land, deepening John's suspicions. "Old Batty?" John raised an eyebrow upon reading another point Tang Mi had made. Little Batty has never let go of his hatred for him. Barty Sr.'s lack of ambition puzzled John. After returning from Poland, Barty Sr. frequently visited Barty Jr., despite the upcoming election in which he was a favored candidate. If elected, Barty Sr. would reach the pinnacle of power, necessitating a new British Minister of Magic. John was surprised by Barty Sr.'s apparent disinterest in the election, despite having been instrumental in pushing it forward. "Has old Batty changed?" John mused, tapping his finger on the table. Perhaps a meeting with Barty Sr. was in order. Being too preoccupied could be problematic if Barty Sr. lacked motivation. With the election seemingly in their favor, it would be unfortunate if Barty Sr. chose not to participate. Yet, his continued advocacy for the Werewolf Equalization Bill suggested otherwise. At the Ministry of Magic, the debate over werewolf equalization, a cause Barty Sr. had championed numerous times, was ongoing. Despite his position as minister, his focus seemed to have shifted, raising questions about his priorities and the future direction of the magical community. In the office of the Minister of Magic, after a long and tiring session in the Parliament, Minister Bagnold, affectionately known as Old Batty, massaged his temples, feeling the weight of his responsibilities. The push for werewolf rights is an inevitable progression. Why can't they see that? He lamented. Pierce, his ever-diligent aide, entered with a tray carrying a steaming cup of tea. It was a small gesture, but it spoke volumes of his dedication. Such tasks could easily be delegated, yet he chose to attend to them personally. "Minister, I'm puzzled," Pierce admitted as he placed the tea on the desk. "Why are you so committed to championing the cause of werewolves? Is it because of the upcoming election?" Old Batty took a moment to savor the tea, its warmth and the rich aroma of black tea providing a brief respite from his concerns. He looked up at Pierce, a hint of amusement in his eyes at the question. "Pierce, not everything is about clinging to power," he explained, setting the cup down. "Sometimes we must act not for our own benefit, but for the greater good." Pierce was taken aback. The notion of pursuing a cause without personal gain was foreign to him. "Not for yourself?" he echoed, genuinely curious. "Then why go to such lengths?" Old Batty's commitment to the cause of werewolf equality was not a mere political maneuver. It was a testament to his belief in justice and equality for all magical beings, regardless of the personal or political cost. Chapter 613, Old Barty's True Intentions and Friendship. Once, Barty Crouch Sr. had chased after high positions and craved power. But now, he recognized the grave mistake he had made in the past. In his eagerness to secure his position, he had sent his own son, Barty Jr., to Azkaban without allowing him a chance to defend himself. However, his heart softened under his wife's pleas, leading him to replace Barty Jr. with his terminally ill wife in Azkaban. This decision led to widespread condemnation and bred resentment in Barty Jr. Despite using the Imperious Curse to control his household for over a decade, Barty Sr. could not regain his lost power. After John revealed that Barty Jr. was innocent of the crimes against the Longbottoms, Barty Sr. realized his error. Even as he ascended to coveted positions, letting his work consume him, he became increasingly estranged from his son. He was lauded as the best minister for magic in decades, yet his personal life suffered. "I'm fortunate," Barty Sr. remarked to Pierce, reflecting on his partnership. "I have an excellent partner." The Silverhand's influence had altered Barty Sr.'s perspective on power, motivating him to run for election, not for himself, but as a means to atone for his past mistakes with Barty Jr. The Werewolf Equalization Bill, in particular, felt like a gesture of goodwill towards the werewolves. Leaving the ministry, Barty Sr. returned to the now desolate Crouch House, once a home filled with life. Gazing at his Medal of Merlin first class, he leaned back and sighed deeply. "Feeling tired?" John's voice broke the silence, surprising Barty Sr., who welcomed him with a smile. "It seems you consider me a friend," John observed, noting the unexpected visit was a sign of mutual respect and friendship. Barty Sr. had indeed changed. Previously, he would have panicked at John's unannounced visit or cautioned him about public opinion. Now, he was open to friendship. John, sitting comfortably on the sofa, suggested, "You might consider bringing Winky back. Hogwarts is much more liberal now than during your school days." Barty Sr. agreed, expressing a desire to make amends with the house elf Winky, who was now working at Hogwarts. Their conversation turned to Barty Sr.'s potential candidacy in the upcoming election. Confirming his intentions, Barty Sr. extended his hand to John, who accepted it, understanding his role in Barty Sr.'s decision. "Are we friends?" Barty Seymour inquired earnestly. Perhaps, John replied, hinting at the future of their relationship, depending on Barty Sr.'s actions and beliefs. As John prepared to leave, Barty Sr. affirmed their friendship, looking forward to celebrating at a tavern post-election. Left alone, Barty Sr. contemplated the future, ready to return to his duties, acknowledging the loneliness that often accompanies positions of power. Outside, John opened a magical passage to Hogwarts, surprising Malfoy with his abilities. The encounter hinted at the mysteries and connections that lay ahead, as John effortlessly demonstrated his magical prowess. In this chapter, Barty Crouch Sr.'s journey from a power-hungry official to a man seeking redemption and friendship unfolds, highlighting the complexities of his character and his evolving relationship with John. The magic had vanished. "Magic, of course," he said, glancing at Malfoy, who was unusually awake in the lounge. "Are you here alone?" "Of course not," Malfoy replied, looking around before whispering. "I'm with Astoria, and I've noticed something odd about Daphne lately." "Is it because she hasn't been clinging to you as usual?" John inquired. "She hasn't been clinging to me at all," Malfoy confirmed, a hint of confusion in his voice. John gave Malfoy a look that was hard to decipher. "Don't you see that as a positive development?" "It is positive," Malfoy admitted, albeit reluctantly, "but it defies common sense. Even when I'm holding Astoria's hand right in front of Daphne, she doesn't react." "I'd advise against testing her limits," John said, finding Malfoy's curiosity somewhat exasperating. Malfoy's tone turned serious. "I believe she's genuinely upset this time, John." "Upset? Are you referring to the incident with the chef at the Chelsea Muggle restaurant over the Christmas holidays?" John pondered for a moment before speaking. "You're not suggesting I send someone after that chef, are you?" "Of course not, though that's an interesting idea," Malfoy said after a moment's thought. "Perhaps she feels inadequate in helping you." "I've never considered her a burden, Draco." "But she might see herself that way," Malfoy said with an unusual earnestness. "You're perfect, John. Your perfection makes others struggle to find their place by your side." John was taken aback, not realizing his friends felt such pressure. His kindness was never conditional. Yet, he gave Malfoy a puzzled look. "That doesn't sound like something you would say." Malfoy bristled at the implication. "What do you mean, unlike me? Fleur asked me to talk to you about it." So it was Fleur's influence. John wasn't surprised. Fleur, the de facto leader of their group, had always been perceptive, much like Percy. She had a deep understanding of their dynamics, especially among the girls. "I'll have a word with Daphne," John decided, much to Malfoy's relief. Astoria had been so worried about Daphne's state that it had affected her appetite. Now at least, Astoria could eat in peace. In the dining hall, John examined the dish in front of him. Despite its unappealing appearance, he could identify the ingredients. "So, you've been experimenting with new recipes lately?" he asked Daphne. Daphne had taken her recent culinary failures to heart, identifying the problem as a mismatch with Western palates. Determined to improve, she decided to pivot towards Western cuisine. "I see the logic. All right," John said, cutting into what appeared to be beef. The pink interior suggested it was medium rare, a cooking style he recognized. Facing Daphne's hopeful gaze, John cautiously asked, "Did you acquire this recipe from that Eastern wizard?" "How did you know?" Daphne asked, surprised. "Just give me his address," John said, finally taking a bite. To his surprise, it tasted better than he expected, despite the lack of seasoning. The raw yet charred meat had a unique flavor, reminiscent of chasing cattle on the prairies. "I think werewolves would appreciate this," John commented, encouraging Daphne to continue in this direction. Catching a glimpse of Daphne's joy, John turned to find Malfoy avoiding his gaze. Malfoy coughed awkwardly and excused himself to prepare for the upcoming Quidditch match. The reformation of the Sacred 28 families was still underway, with the Malfoys playing a significant role in the reshuffling. Pureblood families eager to join this historic alliance were also seeking opportunities to demonstrate their loyalty. Meanwhile, another meeting at the Ministry of Magic was about to begin. Given the context provided, I'll create a refined version of a chapter that could belong to a fan-fiction novel titled The Werewolf Equalization Bill, inspired by the Harry Potter universe. This will involve enhancing the narrative quality, correcting grammatical errors and improving the overall flow of the story. Chapter 5. The Council's Decision. In the heart of the Ministry of Magic, beneath the gaze of portraits that whispered secrets of the past, the Council convened. The chamber, usually echoing with the mundane affairs of wizarding bureaucracy, was charged with an air of anticipation. At the center of today's agenda was the Werewolf Equalization Bill, a piece of legislation that had stirred the wizarding community to its core. Hermione Granger, now a respected advocate for magical creature rights, stood before the assembly, her posture radiating determination. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice clear and compelling, "today we stand at a crossroads. The Werewolf Equalization Bill represents more than just a change in law. It symbolizes our commitment to equality, compassion, scion, and justice for all magical beings." Murmurs of agreement and dissent intermingled in the air, reflecting the division that had split the community. Some saw the bill as a necessary step towards inclusivity, while others feared the implications of granting werewolves rights akin to those of witches and wizards. As Hermione continued, she addressed the concerns with reasoned arguments and heartfelt pleas. "We must not let fear dictate our actions. Werewolves, when not transformed, possess the same capacity for good and evil as any of us. It is our duty to ensure they can live their lives without persecution, with access to education, employment, and healthcare." The opposition, led by a senior official known for his conservative views, countered with talk of safety and the unpredictability of werewolves. "How can we guarantee the safety of our children, our families, when a werewolf could lose control at any moment?" he challenged, his voice echoing ominously in the chamber. Hermione met his gaze, unflinching. "Precautions and support systems can be put in place. We have the means to create a society where werewolves can manage their condition with dignity. Fear should not be the foundation of our laws." The debate raged on, with each side presenting their case with fervor. As the sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the chamber, the moment of decision arrived. The council members cast their votes, a tangible tension filling the room as each parchment was tallied. Finally, the head of the council rose, his expression inscrutable. "By a majority vote, the Werewolf Equalization Bill has been passed," he announced, his voice resonating with the weight of the decision. A mixed chorus of cheers and gasps filled the chamber as the implications of the decision began to settle. Hermione's face lit up with a triumphant smile, her eyes shining with tears of relief and joy. The battle had been long, but this victory marked a significant step forward in the fight for equality within the wizarding world. As the assembly dispersed, conversations buzzed with the news of the historic decision. The passage of the Werewolf Equalization Bill would be remembered as a pivotal moment, a testament to the power of empathy and the relentless pursuit of justice. For Hermione, it was a reminder that even in a world filled with magic, the most profound changes often came from the human heart. This revised chapter aims to provide a clearer, more engaging narrative that captures the essence of the fanfiction while improving upon the original text's quality. Chapter 614, The Werewolf Plan and Percy's Outbreak. The discussion on werewolf rights had taken a new turn. Previously, any mention of werewolf equalization was met with immediate opposition. However, this time, the atmosphere was markedly different. Old Batty, a longtime advocate for werewolf rights, took the floor. Given the advent of the wolfsbane potion, werewolves can now control their transformations, mitigating the risk they once posed. Yet despite this, they continue to face unwarranted discrimination. As victims of such prejudice, werewolves are denied the sympathy and treatment they deserve, Old Batty explained, his gaze sweeping across the room of silent senior officials. "I propose that we restore werewolves to their rightful status as wizards and remove them from the category of magical creatures." He concluded, "Who here supports this proposal and who opposes?" After posing the question, he sat down, scanning the room for reactions. An official began to speak, but was quickly silenced by a colleague. Sophie and Chudai watched, their anticipation palpable. The room remained silent, with no voices of dissent. "Now let's vote on the Werewolf Equality Bill. If there are no objections, the bill will be passed," Batty Sr. announced. He was the first to raise his hand in support, followed by others, one after another. The difficulty in passing such measures often boiled down to a lack of perceived benefits. However, the recent actions of Lucius Malfoy had shifted the balance. By sending out invitations to the pureblood families, implying that support for the bill was a prerequisite for inclusion in the prestigious Sacred 28, Lucius had made it clear: join the cause or face exclusion. Arthur Weasley, present at the meeting, noted the change in the voting pattern. It was a clear sign that times were changing. Percy, too, raised his hand in support of the bill, marking a significant moment as the motion was passed, reinstating werewolves as wizards. After the meeting, Arthur noticed Lucius conversing with Barty Sr. in the ministry. Despite their past animosity, Lucius now looked at Arthur with a smug, malicious grin. Percy approached his father, a rare occurrence, and suggested they talk in private. They headed to Arthur's office, where Percy's discomfort was palpable, especially when he noticed a family photo on the desk. Arthur mentioned Molly's sadness over Percy's absence during Christmas, to which Percy responded that he had sent presents back, including one for Ginny. "Why do we continue this way?" Arthur asked, frustration in his voice. "Voldemort is gone. What's the point of all this division?" Percy replied calmly, highlighting the root of their estrangement. "We serve different people, Dad. You were the one who got angry first." Arthur tried to interject, but Percy cut him off. "Is it because I chose to work at the ministry? Because I chose John over Dumbledore?" The conversation laid bare the deep rift between father and son, a divide not just personal but reflective of the broader conflicts within the wizarding world. "I don't want to talk about that right now," Mr. Weasley said, sidestepping the question. He had indeed hoped Percy would support Dumbledore back then, believing that no one would take seriously a group of children's plan to defeat Voldemort. Time, however, had proven his paternal instincts wrong. "That's not what I want to discuss," Percy shifted the topic, his tone serious. "It's about the Sacred 28. Mr. Weasley paused, giving Percy a searching look. Percy continued, "You're aware that the Sacred 28 families are undergoing changes. Vacancies will be filled by newcomers, and families that have died out will be removed. The Weasleys will be included." "That bunch of prejudiced, pure-blood alliances," Mr. Weasley remarked dismissively. "The Weasleys never wanted to be part of it." "That's going to change," Percy insisted. "Change? Because of Malfoy or John Wick?" Mr. Weasley interjected, his voice laced with skepticism. "We've never cared for those false titles. We have our own path." Percy took a deep breath, frustration evident in his voice. "You're as stubborn as ever. Can't you see things from my perspective or Ginny's? You're always so focused on yourself. Yes, you have an affinity for muggles, but at what cost? George and Fred received sponsorship from John, Charlie's burns were treated thanks to silver hands, and Ron had to make do with an old wand before John came into our lives," Percy argued, his voice rising. "You obsess over trivial muggle artifacts and ignore the needs of your children, pushing them into the dangerous ranks of the Order of the Phoenix." For the first time, Mr. Weasley found himself at a loss for words, taken aback by his son's rebuke. "You refuse to see the reality," Percy continued, his voice thick with years of pent-up emotion. "When our family was at its poorest, struggling to afford even a single galleon, did you consider the toll on George and the others? Have you truly listened to them? Does being a Gryffindor mean we must live recklessly, ignoring the chance for a better life? Is it so wrong to aspire to a position in the Ministry of Magic, to seek a stable life?" Percy challenged, his frustration palpable. "You may think my choices make me a sellout, a Weasley unlike any other, but it's because of me that our family name remains respected among the Sacred 28. I've kept our name from being tarnished, even befriended those who would otherwise see us as enemies." Percy's gaze was intense as he faced his father. "If the Weasleys don't choose a side, we risk losing everything, including the respect of those who've supported us. Why squander the opportunities and friendships we've been offered? When will you look beyond Dumbledore and see me, see us?" Percy's voice softened, his plea that of a son seeking acknowledgement. "You and Mum, everyone adores Harry, but what about your own children? The savior is gone, Dad. As the third son of the Weasley family, Percy Ignatius Weasley, I'm asking you to think of our family." Mr. Weasley was at a loss, confronted with his son's earnest plea. Was he truly being selfish? Should he reconsider the Weasley stance on joining the new Sacred 28? These questions haunted Mr. Weasley as he reflected on Percy's words, considering the sacrifices and struggles of his family. The Burrow, once a symbol of their modesty and resilience, now stood as a testament to their changing fortunes. Entering the kitchen, where Mrs. Weasley was busy preparing for the upcoming Christmas festivities, Mr. Weasley found himself pondering the future. With the children grown and the house often quiet, save for the occasional visit from the twins, he realized the complexity of their simple life. The decisions he made now would shape the legacy of the Weasley family for generations to come. Chapter 615, The Prosperity of Werewolves and the Twilight Wolf. A swarm of reporters flooded into the Ministry of Magic, their cameras flashing incessantly, illuminating the weary face of Minister Barty Crouch Sr. Questions flew from every direction, probing into the outcomes of the parliamentary meeting, the implications of a warning received by a senior official's family from the Malfoys, and the potential changes following the recent educational reform. The focus of their attention, Minister Crouch, had been tirelessly advocating for the rights of werewolves, facing defeat in each attempt. However, the unusually short duration of this meeting hinted at an unexpected development, piquing the curiosity of the keen reporters. They eagerly awaited a groundbreaking announcement from Crouch, who paused, commanding silence with his mere presence. His gray temples stood out, a testament to his long battle for equality. "Pierce, bring the document," Crouch instructed his aide, who approached with a mixture of nervousness and excitement, holding a document signed by all 50 officials of the ministry's parliament. The reporters sensed the significance of the moment, their anticipation palpable. Crouch opened the file, cleared his throat, and addressed the crowd. After thorough discussion in the second meeting of the Ministry of Magic in 1998, we have decided to redefine the classification of werewolves. No longer will they be listed under humanoid magical creatures, but as human beings. The room fell silent as he continued. This marks the beginning of a new era where werewolves and wizards will enjoy equal rights. All registered werewolves will be acknowledged by our society, and we will initiate further discussions to eradicate discrimination against them. He held up the document, signed by myself and all 50 officials. This decree takes effect immediately. The announcement was met with stunned silence, then a wave of murmurs as the magnitude of the change began to sink in. Among the crowd, Sophie and Chudai, children of the old werewolf Jack, trembled with emotion. "See, Grandpa," Sophie whispered, tears in his eyes. "We are humans now." Chudai, struggling to contain his own emotions, placed a comforting hand on his brother's shoulder. This moment was the culmination of years of struggle and discrimination, a victory they had scarcely dared to dream of. If not for their alliance with the mysterious Silver Mask, such a day might never have come. The werewolf community was overwhelmed, their hearts heavy with relief and gratitude. Sophie and Chudai longed to return to Silver Cross Hospital to share the news with old Jack, their leader who had guided them out of the darkness. Meanwhile, old Jack's health had been declining since his abduction. Known as the Dusk Wolf, he had lived a tumultuous life, marked by tragedy and isolation after being turned into a werewolf as a child. His transformation had led to a life of running and hiding, away from the family and the love he had known, culminating in a solitary existence far from human civilization. His choices, driven by the curse of his condition, had led to profound loss and sorrow. Yet, in his twilight years, he had found a purpose in raising his adopted children, fighting for a world where werewolves could live without fear. This new decree from the Ministry of Magic was a beacon of hope, a sign that perhaps, at last, his dreams for his kind were becoming a reality. The girl searched in vain for the boy. In the chaos of war, she met her end, falling victim to the brutality of soldiers. When old Jack returned, he found nothing but devastation where his village once stood. The sight of his home, now a place of death, brought him to his knees, his heart heavy with grief. In his despair, he left everything behind and encountered Fenrir Greyback, joining the werewolf community, a decision that felt akin to living in hell. Despite nearly losing his life to Greyback, old Jack's lingering conscience led him to become a protector of the children. After Greyback's imprisonment in Azkaban, Old Jack made a pivotal choice, seeking out someone he believed could be as formidable as Greyback. However, he discovered not just a villain, but a leader worth following. Under the protection of the Silver Hand, the werewolf community found safety. Old Jack personally tended to the raised flag every day, symbolizing their unity. The community flourished, with improved conditions in Nocturne Alley and the construction of a school for werewolves. For the first time, Old Jack saw hope for his kind. If anyone in the world would willingly lay down their life for John Wick, Old Jack would undoubtedly be among them. The scars of past abductions healed, and he faced the inevitable end of life with acceptance. On his deathbed, Old Jack confessed his sins, his vision blurred, but sensing the presence of his children. He prayed for forgiveness, willing to bear eternal damnation if it meant his children could live as true wizards. He pledged his undying loyalty to his king, even from the depths of hell. As Old Jack's life ebbed away, he heard distant cheers and the cries of Tylo. Someone called his name, but he lacked the strength to respond. With that, the Twilight Wolf's journey came to an end. Grandfather, Zuo Fei and Chu Dai burst into Silver Cross Hospital, eager to share the news that would fulfill Old Jack's greatest wish. Sophie, with his superior physical condition, led the way into the ward, exclaiming, "Werewolves! Werewolves are equal, Grandpa!" But his joy was cut short by the sight of Old Jack, motionless. The room fell silent, save for Tylo's sobs and the therapist's soft words. Sophie felt as if all strength had left him, and the deputy director of the Werewolf Affairs Office, usually so composed, wept openly. Chu Dai, Old Jack's eldest, entered the room in silence. After a moment, he asked the therapist to leave and approach the bed. Kneeling beside it, he took Old Jack's hand, tears streaming down his face. "We succeeded. Your wish came true. Werewolves are no longer seen as mere magical creatures. We can walk openly in this country." As he spoke, Old Jack's hand grew cold, but a smile graced his lips at the news. Chu Dai whispered, "Great, you heard that," before breaking down alongside his siblings. Their tears were a mix of joy, sorrow, and relief at a wish fulfilled. The Dusk Wolf had passed, but his legacy would live on through his children, who would unwaveringly follow in the king's footsteps. The news of Old Jack's death and the equalization of werewolves reached John almost simultaneously. John felt a sharp pang in his heart and took a moment to compose himself. "Old Jack," he murmured, reminiscing about their first encounter. Old Jack, bearing a scarred face, had once sought protection for the werewolf community during Voldemort's resurgence. The werewolf community had steadfastly refused to align with either the Order of the Phoenix or Voldemort's forces. Throughout these turbulent times, Old Jack had been a constant presence by John's side, offering his silent support. The loss of the old man deeply saddened John. "I hope, as you depart, you'll hear this news. Your efforts will not have been in vain. I'll ensure it," John solemnly vowed. Leaving the Star Society behind, John stepped outside and gazed upward. The air was heavy with humidity, and dark clouds loomed ominously in the sky. "Such weather really fails to read the room," John remarked dryly. Drawing his wand, he whispered a tribute to his fallen friend. "The werewolf community shall know freedom, as shall you, Old Jack." A brilliant white light emanated from the direction of Hogwarts, slicing through the gathering storm clouds with determination. Students from Hogwarts, one by one, turned their gazes skyward. They witnessed a moment that would be etched in history, a king mourning the loss of a loyal friend and ally. The light, symbolic of hope and freedom, signified a pivotal change, not just for the werewolf community, but for the magical world at large. Chapter 616, A Change of Power and Lupin's New Role. John attended Jack Sr.'s funeral, a serene affair that brought together Old Jack's grieving children. In the wake of Old Jack's passing, the transition of his estate, which could have sparked disputes or even violence in a less harmonious family, proceeded with unexpected tranquility. Chu Dai stepped down from his role as director of the Werewolf Affairs Office, making way for Zuo Fei to assume the mantle of Werewolf Counselor. This new responsibility towards the werewolf community and his siblings weighed heavily on him. As John arrived, the children respectfully greeted him, but he gently dismissed the formalities. Approaching Old Jack's coffin, adorned with flowers and the peaceful visage of the deceased, John felt a sense of relief. Old Jack's face, marked by the scars of a werewolf attack, seemed to soften under John's touch as he used magic to conceal the scars, whispering, "Go to heaven with pride, Old Jack." Sophie, followed by the younger Taylors, approached John with a solemn vow. "Werewolves will never turn their backs on you, Wang." John, sensing Sophie's emotional turmoil and his desire to solidify their alliance, advised him to take some time off to grieve. He reassured Sophie that the legacy of Old Jack and the werewolf community's loyalty would endure. John acknowledged Sophie's unique burden among his siblings, a sentiment that moved Sophie deeply. With Chudai's departure, Sophie felt the weight of his responsibilities even more. After the ceremony, John encountered Lupin, who hesitated to join the mourners, feeling unworthy. John, noting Lupin's isolation from the Order of the Phoenix, encouraged him to seek his own path. Lupin expressed his astonishment at the progress towards werewolf equality, a vision he hadn't dared to imagine. Lupin, placing a flower under a tree, hinted at the Order of the Phoenix's diminished relevance and his hope that John wouldn't hold their past actions against them. John's indifference to the Order offered Lupin some comfort, signaling a potential for reconciliation. Noticing Lupin's worn attire, John teased him about the quality of the clothes he had previously given him. Lupin, unbothered, joined John, indicating a readiness to move forward. As they walked together, Lupin shared his intentions to find his own way, signaling a new chapter in his life, free from past affiliations and open to new possibilities. After the werewolves achieved equality, concerns about salary deductions and reporting diminished. "We could build a house, make it larger, so the next family can live comfortably," Lupin suggested. "Oh?" John paused, giving Lupin an unexpected look before asking, "Thinking of settling down?" "You've met her, Nymphadora Tonks, though she prefers not to be called Nymphadora," Lupin shared as they walked from the mountain to the werewolf community's gate. Taking one last glance at the community, Lupin turned to John. "I should be going." Extending his hand, Lupin smiled. "Farewell, John." John grasped his hand, replying with a light chuckle. "Goodbye, Remus." As Lupin started to walk away, John called out, "Remus." Turning back, Lupin looked puzzled. John then asked, "Would you be interested in a position at the Ministry of Magic, in the Werewolf Affairs Office? Chudai has left, and they're short-staffed. The pay is slightly better than an Auror's, though it's not near the werewolf community." Lupin's smile broadened. "I accept." John smiled back, gesturing with his hand, and a golden trace opened a passage to Hogwarts. "Then, please arrange an interview with your boss." Once the passage closed, Lupin stared at the spot John had left from, shaking his head. He never does follow the usual path. A week had passed since Old Jack's death, and John had mostly returned to his usual routine. The equalization of werewolves had brought more attention to John's work, and it seemed a new Medal of Merlin, first class, was imminent. Yet, John remained focused on his studies, delving into the Arc Book of God and seeking inspiration in Ravenclaw's writings. On Valentine's Day, John sampled Daphne's latest culinary attempt. The presentation had improved, which was a positive sign in John's eyes. However, upon tasting what seemed to be a shrimp dish, John was surprised to feel a surge of magical power within him. "You made this in the Midnight Kitchen?" John inquired, eyeing Daphne with suspicion. Daphne, taken aback, replied, "No." Puzzled, John contemplated the shrimp before him. In a moment of divine speed, everything around him seemed to slow down. He watched as Malfoy was about to eat a spoonful of mashed potatoes, and with no one noticing, John quickly added a piece of the shrimp into it. As time resumed its normal pace, Malfoy consumed the mashed potatoes and immediately fell to the ground, writhing and groaning. "What is this sensation?" Malfoy gasped, sweating profusely. "It's like tires that have been sitting in a Muggle car factory for over a decade, yet it's strangely thrilling." "The contradiction is too much," Malfoy exclaimed, running wildly around the auditorium, leaving everyone bewildered. John pondered. Did Daphne manage to infuse emotion into her cooking, like a Hufflepuff might? This technique could amplify the taste of food, both good and bad, and the magical power within the dish seemed to nourish both the body and magical abilities. Unaware of what had transpired, Daphne watched Malfoy's erratic exit with confusion. "Maybe he was triggered by something," John suggested calmly. "Triggered? Did his sister break up with him? Daphne mused, her curiosity piqued as she glanced at Astoria, who was equally baffled by Malfoy's sudden outburst. What they didn't realize was that Astoria was just as confused, unable to understand why Malfoy had acted so irrationally, as if under a curse. Yet, what puzzled her most was Malfoy's unexpected display of physical endurance, as he ran throughout the castle multiple times that day, showcasing remarkable fitness. The atmosphere in the Great Hall was electric, and amidst it all, John couldn't help but marvel at Daphne's magical culinary skills. The food was nothing short of amazing. A thought crossed his mind, a mischievous idea that if Malfoy were to eat Daphne's magical food continuously for half a month, he might just end up with a physique resembling Neville's. However, the very notion of Malfoy transforming in such a manner with just one bite was enough to make John chuckle inwardly. He imagined Malfoy would rather choose to end his own life than face such a fate after just one taste. As February unfolded, the days passed in a calm and orderly fashion. The curriculum for the 7th year was demanding, and the looming NEWT exams added an extra layer of pressure, pushing the students to study harder than ever. Many lamented not having taken the initiative to learn the 7th year material during their 6th year, realizing too late the advantage it would have given them. As time edged closer to March, a ripple of excitement and anxiety swept through the student body. It was a period of intense study and preparation, but it was also a time when the social dynamics within the school took an unexpected turn. A message circulated among the students, causing a stir within the pure-blood circles. A new Sacred 28 clan had emerged, reshuffling the established order and sparking a flurry of speculation and intrigue. This development sent shockwaves through the corridors of Hogwarts, igniting conversations and debates. The emergence of a new Sacred 28 clan was a significant event, one that could potentially alter the balance of power and influence within the wizarding community. As the news spread, it became the topic of discussion in every corner of the school, from the bustling Great Hall to the quietest corners of the library. The students, particularly those of pure-blood lineage, were abuzz with curiosity and concern. Questions about the identity of the new clan, their history, and their intentions were on everyone's lips. The speculation was rampant, and theories abounded, each more elaborate than the last. In the midst of this whirlwind of activity, John and his friends found themselves caught up in the excitement. They pondered the implications of this development and what it might mean for their future. The emergence of a new Sacred 28 clan was not just a matter of social standing or prestige. It was a sign of shifting alliances and changing power dynamics within the wizarding world. As March approached, the students of Hogwarts braced themselves for what was to come. The NWT exams loomed large on the horizon, but so too did the potential for change and upheaval within their community. The emergence of a new Sacred 28 clan was a reminder that the wizarding world was always evolving, always in flux, and that they were a part of that ever-changing landscape. Chapter 617, The Formation of the Ancient Clan Alliance. The concept of pure blood, first introduced by Salazar Slytherin, the inaugural head of Slytherin House, posits that a true pure-blood family tree should be devoid of any Muggle-born individuals. However, if this stringent criterion were strictly adhered to, the world would boast scarcely more than 10 genuinely pure-blood families. Over time, it became evident that the ancient pure-blood families were not as untainted as they claimed. Instead of severing ties with Muggles, they employed more covert methods to maintain their so-called purity. Families like the Blacks would go as far as to erase the names of any members who deviated from their ideals, effectively purging them from their lineage in a bid to remain forever pure. Yet, this mantra often proved to be a hollow pursuit. The intermarriages among pure-blood families wove a complex web of relationships, connecting even the most unlikely of families, such as the Weasleys and the Malfoys. Some families, driven by an obsession with purity, resorted to inbreeding, a practice that led to dire consequences, including mental and physical deformities, as seen in the Gaunt family. The reevaluation of the so-called Sacred 28, pure-blood families shifted focus from the fallacy of pure blood to the merits of strength and historical significance. A family's ability to endure for millennia spoke volumes of its power. Nevertheless, there were formidable pureblood families not counted among the Sacred 28, possibly due to the presence of muggles or squibs in their lineage at some point. Thus, a new designation was proposed, the Old Alliance. Lucius Malfoy, standing in the ancient Malfoy Underground Rotunda, addressed the gathering of family heads. "We aim to forge a bond stronger than that of the Sacred 28 clans," he declared. "The times are evolving, and we must adapt accordingly." With a firm tap of his cane on the ground, he continued, "Our ancestors knew the value of adaptability. Like Amanda Malfoy, who ventured to England with William the Conqueror, our survival hinges on our ability to evolve." Lucius's words resonated with the assembly, sparking discussions among the ancient families. "Power is the ultimate currency," he asserted. "Those who cling to outdated traditions will be left behind, while those who embrace change will prevail." The Gore family leader stood, promptly aligning with Malfoy's vision. Soon, other families, including the Crabs, Greengrasses, Diggories, Slughorns, Parkinsons, Abbotts, and Crouches, pledged their allegiance to the Ancient Alliance. It was clear that resisting this new order would only lead to obsolescence. Arthur Weasley, caught in a moment of introspection, pondered the future of his family. The words of his son Percy, urging him to consider the well-being of his children, echoed in his mind. Reluctantly, he realized that joining the Ancient Alliance might be the only way to secure a prosperous future for the Weasleys. As the final vote was cast, Lucius Malfoy acknowledged Arthur Weasley's decision with a rare nod of approval. "You've chosen wisely, Arthur Weasley," he said, devoid of his usual scorn. Thus, a new era was ushered in with the birth of the Ancient Clan Alliance, marking the beginning of a powerful coalition led by the Malfoys, followed by the Weasleys, Crouches, Greengrasses, Longbottoms, Edgars, Diggories, and others. This alliance, built on the pillars of strength, history, and adaptability, promised to redefine the future of the wizarding world. The ancient clans, including the Slughorns, Delacours, Parkinsons, Gores, Crabbles, and Macmillans, united to form an ancient alliance, bringing together the leaders of 28 distinguished families. They convened beneath the Malfoy estate to forge a pact, creating a shared fund that would be collectively owned and managed by these families. Lucius Malfoy was appointed the first manager of this fund, and he made a significant decision to allocate half of its resources to the Little Wizard Foundation, declaring, "We are not those decayed relics of the past. Our emergence will better preserve the peace of the wizarding world." With this gesture, Lucius aimed to showcase a nobility distinct from their ancestors, blending pride with a newfound commitment to societal welfare. This alliance marked the beginning of a new era, one where the outdated and corrupt were left behind. Families like the Gores and Crabbles demonstrated the importance of aligning with the right leaders, contributing nearly all their wealth to the fund and proving that actions speak louder than words. However, this act of generosity did not sit well with everyone, particularly Arthur Weasley, who was taken aback by the sight of two families donating such a substantial portion of their wealth. He pondered over his family's financial struggles, questioning the necessity of flaunting wealth. In a surprising turn of events, Percy Weasley stepped forward with a donation of over 20,000 galleons on behalf of the Weasley family, leaving Arthur in disbelief. Percy revealed that his brothers, George and Fred, had amassed a fortune through their business, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, which had become a lucrative investment. Arthur was embarrassed, realizing he had underestimated his son's entrepreneurial success. Lucius Malfoy's leadership propelled his family to the forefront of the wizarding world, altering his reputation from disdainful elitism to a challenge for those who opposed him. The establishment of the Ancient Alliance and the subsequent ranking of families reshaped the social dynamics within Hogwarts and beyond. Families like the Macmillans and Abbotts found their place within this new order, accepting their positions with grace. The revelation of the Alliance's rankings bolstered Ron Weasley's confidence, dispelling his previous skepticism and criticisms of the Pureblood Coalition. The list of families closely associated with John Wick, a key figure in this alliance, was a clear indication of the shifting power dynamics within the wizarding community. Albus Dumbledore, upon reviewing the list, recognized the true purpose of the ancient alliance and its service to a greater cause, with the Malfoys, Weasleys, and Crouches leading the charge. This strategic alignment of families signaled a transformative period for the wizarding world, one that promised a departure from the old ways and a move towards a more inclusive and progressive future. John's partner, needless to say, was the third member of their alliance. The fourth was Greengrass, whose two daughters were both members of the Starlight Club. The fifth was the Longbottom family, with Neville Longbottom, the vanquisher of Voldemort, being a prominent member of the Society of Stars. The sixth and seventh members were Edgar and Diggory, respectively, both of whom were also part of the Starlight Club. In fact, Lucius Malfoy had revealed his intentions from the very beginning. By donating half of the ancient fund to the Silverhand's Little Wizard Foundation, he made it clear whom he supported. Dumbledore sighed softly, recognizing the shift in dynamics. The entire British magical community was now hanging on John's every word. Although Wang Sui had yet to make a public appearance, his influence was palpable everywhere. The strategic moves made by Lucius Malfoy were not just a display of loyalty, but a clear message to the magical community about where the power dynamics were shifting. Dumbledore, ever the observer, could see the undercurrents of change that were sweeping through their world. The alliances being formed and the silent battles being fought in the shadows were indicative of a larger struggle for influence and control. The involvement of families like the Greengrasses and the Longbottoms, both with deep roots in the magical community, alongside newer players like Edgar and Diggory, showed the diverse support base that John and his partner had managed to assemble. This coalition, with its blend of old blood and new ideas, was a formidable force, challenging the status quo and setting the stage for a new era in the magical world. As Dumbledore pondered these developments, he couldn't help but feel a mix of apprehension and hope. The changing landscape of the magical society was a sign that no power, however entrenched, was immutable. Yet, the uncertainty of what lay ahead weighed heavily on his mind. The balance of power was delicate, and the consequences of its shift were unpredictable. In this game of alliances and influence, the future of the magical community hung in the balance, with every move and countermove shaping the destiny of all who dwelled within it. Chapter 618, Birth from Death, A Surge in Europe. John continued to observe the changes in the Protoss guards. Over time, these guards began to exhibit a greater diversity in their characteristics. Although their physical forms remained largely unchanged, their personalities became more pronounced. For instance, traits that were mildly irritating before now became significantly more so. This was particularly evident in the case of Draco, whom John watched with a mix of amusement and exasperation as he boldly entered a room, only to have the Protoss guards inside undergo a collective transformation. Moments later, Draco was being pursued relentlessly. "I never realized Draco had such an impact," John mused, somewhat bemused by the situation. He found that Draco had an uncanny ability to provoke reactions, both outside and within their ranks. John now regretted his insistence on bringing Draco along. Perhaps it would have been better to leave him at Hogwarts. However, not all outcomes were negative. During these encounters, Draco's defensive capabilities had noticeably improved, becoming more robust with each challenge. Hector's talents were increasingly focused on mastering the Star Flash, seamlessly integrating various attacks with this technique. Hermo, on the other hand, demonstrated remarkable agility, effortlessly summoning dual swords from the earth with a clap of his hands. It appears that the Protoss guards develop new abilities when they are paired with individuals, John concluded. He noted that the guard who had accompanied Neville had developed an arm significantly larger than those of his counterparts, capable of causing tremors with a single punch, and had also grown taller, nearing 9 feet in height. Daphne's guard had become adept at incapacitating and suspending targets, a skill frequently employed against Draco. As John reflected on the growth of the Protoss guards, he realized it was time for class. The entrance to the Star Club materialized in the first-floor corridor, and he stepped through it. Today's lesson was on the conservation of Magizology, and Hagrid was already waiting for him, not at his usual hut, but at the edge of the Forbidden Forest. "John, Hagrid greeted, signaling for quiet. "What's happening?" John inquired, noticing a Thestral pacing anxiously nearby. Hagrid, barely containing his excitement, explained, "It's a rare occasion. She's about to give birth." The female Thestral was visibly distressed, a sign that she was in labor. Hagrid had deduced this from her size and behavior. As they watched, the Thestral positioned herself under a tree and began to hit her head against the trunk, a desperate attempt to alleviate her pain. "Come on, little one," Hagrid whispered, offering silent encouragement. John was captivated by the scene unfolding before him. Hagrid, remembering his role as a professor, began to explain. Thestrals are often seen as omens of misfortune. Many believe they appear only where tragedy has struck, but that's a misconception. The truth is, it's death that allows wizards to see them, leading to their unfortunate reputation, Hagrid continued. As a result, Thestrals are not widely welcomed, leading to a significant decrease in their habitats. Only a few places now serve as sanctuaries for them. "Life born of death," John echoed softly, watching as the Thestral finally gave birth. The newborn struggled to stand, its legs wobbling weakly. The mother Thestral circled her offspring, encouraging it to rise. Despite several attempts, the foal remained on the ground. Hagrid sighed. "This one is born with a defect. It might be rejected by the herd." In nature, newborns with apparent weaknesses are often left behind. The mother Thestral seemed to understand her child's plight. After a few more attempts, she gently nuzzled her foal, a final act of tenderness. John turned to Hagrid. "Aren't we going to help it?" Hagrid shook his head. "We can't. It's the way of nature." Hagrid, with his simple and honest nature, understood the harsh realities of life better than most. He knew that for a newborn with defects, life could be far more cruel than death. This was the harsh law of nature that even wizards had to respect. As the Thestral mother made one last attempt to help her offspring stand, it seemed as if the little Thestral sensed its impending abandonment, gazing at its mother with its unique, pupilless white eyes. In a moment of determination, the little Thestral mustered all its strength for one final effort. John, observing quietly, subtly assisted not by healing the Thestral's hind legs, but by instilling a walking seed into its soul, empowering it to stand on its own. The creature managed to stand, albeit shakily, beside its mother. "It worked!" Hagrid exclaimed, his voice filled with joy and relief. John, watching the scene unfold, remarked, "Sometimes all it takes is a little effort." He wanted to highlight the difference between magical creatures and wizards. The latter often defy the natural order, driven by their will to overcome. Moved by the scene, Hagrid couldn't help but tear up, a testament to his pure-hearted nature. It was in moments like these that John understood why Hagrid maintained a purity unlike any other. He saw the world in its most unadulterated form. Their emotional moment was interrupted by the arrival of an owl, swiftly dispatched by Basil, John's loyal companion, who intercepted the newspaper it carried. John joked about needing to apologize to the owl post office, given Basil's aggressive greeting. As he unfolded the newspaper, Hagrid expressed confusion about the timing of the delivery, to which John casually mentioned his VIP status with the Daily Prophet, allowing him early access to the news. The newspaper brought attention to the recent upheaval in Europe, particularly the disappearance of the German Minister of Magic and the ensuing political struggle within Germany. Among the candidates vying for the position was Yalefon, a known admirer of Dumbledore, which made him a target among his rivals. John's interest was piqued by another candidate, Ludwig Edgar, whose potential election could significantly impact Durmstrang's standing. As John contemplated the political landscape, the next page detailed an alarming incident in Poland where the Minister of Magic was attacked by a saint. The attack, though thwarted by the public, highlighted the volatile state of affairs in Europe. The saint's death at the hands of an enraged populace underscored the complex dynamics between heroes and those who seek to bring them down. John reflected on these developments, recognizing the intricate web of politics, power, and public sentiment that defined the wizarding world. As he pondered his next move, it was clear that the events unfolding in Europe would require careful consideration and perhaps his intervention. John gazed at the comments with a sense of unease stirring in his heart. Can saints truly infiltrate Poland so effortlessly, a place where even the most esteemed star disciples dare not tread, he pondered, voicing his skepticism. The notion seemed implausible, challenging the very foundations of what he had come to understand about the balance of power and the sanctity of certain realms. Chapter 619, Entering Poland Alone, Unveiling the Truth. In Poland, Inge Griffiths delivered a speech that ignited the crowd's fervor. The atmosphere was electric, filled with chants of freedom and calls for punishment. It was as if the crowd had been injected with a potent serum called the future, fueling their passion. The recent attack by the so-called saints had solidified their sense of righteousness. Lippy, blending in with the crowd, found himself disturbed by the blind support for Griffiths. He had been present during the attack and immediately sensed something amiss with the assailant. Upon reaching the small building where the attack had occurred, Lippy was confronted with a gruesome scene. He turned men into beasts, he gasped in horror. In the magical world, wands are the primary means of casting spells. Yet here, the attackers had resorted to the most primitive and brutal methods to take a life. What was even more disturbing was the crowd's reaction. No one seemed to think there was anything wrong with such barbarity. Instead, they celebrated, believing justice had been served. Lippy pondered the situation. If I were the attacker, I wouldn't have chosen this location, he mused. As an assassin, he knew the site was tactically unsound. No escape routes, insufficient cover, and too exposed. If a follower of Grindelwald was truly committed to dying for their cause, they would have chosen a closer target, he thought aloud. Lippy had been sent to Poland on Old Batty's orders, allowing him to investigate amidst the fanaticism. Poland had become a fortress, isolating its magical community from the outside world. Lippy realized he was the key to unraveling this mystery. A chilling realization dawned on him as he stared at the congealed blood. "He's courting death," Lippy whispered, recalling the attacker's laughter. It wasn't fear, but sacrifice. This attack had galvanized Inge's supporters, transforming the Polish magical community into an impenetrable barrier and significantly boosting the Polish Minister of Magic's international prestige. Lippy shivered at the thought. What kind of person would willingly endure such a painful death? The attacker had been beaten to death by an enraged mob, a sacrifice to elevate the Polish Minister of Magic. Inge Griffiths, once an obscure figure, has become a global sensation in the wake of Grindelwald's rise, Lippy reflected. He was on the verge of uncovering the truth. Donning his hood, Lippy joined the procession, blending in. He had to tread carefully. He was alone in a potentially hostile environment. He could have left, but he knew the information he had wasn't enough. His only option was to infiltrate the Ministry of Magic. Another body awaited him there. The dead cannot speak, but their remains can reveal the experiences they endured. Under a starry night, Lippy made his way into the Polish Ministry of Magic. A fortunate opportunity allowed him to steal a coat and disguise himself. Having visited the ministry before with Old Batty, he had a good understanding of its layout. "The corpses will be on the bottom level," he muttered to himself as he entered the elevator. The body of someone as infamous as Grindelwald wouldn't be disposed of carelessly. It was a symbol of England's triumph. As the elevator descended, Lippy pondered, that scar doesn't seem to have formed naturally. For wizards, ordinary scars can be healed with magic or potions. The only exception is black magic. It was nearly impossible for someone of Grindelwald's caliber to be injured by black magic. With Grindelwald's power, it was unthinkable for anyone to leave a mark on him. Lippy, then, considered Batty Sr.'s speculation. The body they found might not truly be Grindelwald's. But how could it so closely resemble him? In the wizarding world, even the most skilled animagi couldn't conceal their true form after death. Lippy, a master of transfiguration himself, was puzzled. The disguise couldn't be the result of a potion or transfiguration. What then was the method used? The elevator came to a halt, snapping Lippy back to the present. He instinctively ducked his head as the gates opened, revealing a face he recognized all too well, the tall Auror who had previously expelled him from the lobby. Accompanied by 3 other Aurors, the tall figure stepped inside. Lippy, doing his best to blend into the background, was grateful for the hat he had thought to wear. "Are you heading to the black area?" The question, directed at him by the tall Auror, caught Lippy off guard. Altering his voice, he replied, "Director Grimm sent me to retrieve a file." The black area was notorious, situated near the archives. The Auror, with a hint of curiosity, remarked, "It seems Director Grimm has been preoccupied with the Observers lately." Observers? Lippy mentally noted the codename as the elevator reached the Auror's office floor and the group exited. Before leaving, the tall Auror offered a piece of advice. The picket section isn't as intimidating as it seems. No need to cower. The picket section, a team of Aurors reporting directly to the Minister for Magic, was notorious for its raids on the homes of the corrupt, whisking them away to the Ministry, never to be seen again. This force, while a tool for consolidating power, was celebrated by the populace for its crackdown on corruption. As the elevator doors closed, Lippy, still with his head down, wiped away the sweat beading on his forehead. He feared his cover was blown. Being caught within the Ministry could lead to dire consequences, possibly execution for an assassination attempt on the minister. The British Ministry of Magic's stance on such matters seemed trivial in comparison. The elevator continued its descent, the lights indicating the floors passing by. Upon reaching the 10th floor, Lippy found himself at the entrance to the black area, the repository for the Ministry's most guarded secrets. To his left was the archives, and to his right, the darkened path leading to the black sector, visible only to those holding the Hand of Glory. Ensuring the coast was clear, Lippy retrieved the Hand of Glory from his coat and lit it with his wand. The dim light it cast was a small comfort as he ventured into the black area. There, amidst relics of wars past, he stumbled upon a missile, naively unaware of the destruction it could unleash upon the Ministry. Deeper into the black area, Lippy finally came upon Grindelwald's supposed remains, encased in a crystal coffin. Skeptical of the body's preservation, he knew he had to examine it closer. With effort, he managed to open the coffin, the lid landing with a heavy thud. Holding the Hand of Glory close, Lippy began his examination of Grindelwald's body. As he inspected, a sudden realization dawned upon him. "What is this?" he murmured, his fingers brushing against something unexpected. Kneeling beside Grindelwald's body, Lippy pulled out a knife and carefully sliced open the trouser leg, his eyes widening in shock. A distinct scar was revealed on the leg. With a growing suspicion, he proceeded to cut open the other trouser leg, only to find an identical scar. Gently pressing his hand against it, he could tell the scar had been there for some time. His investigation didn't stop there. Upon touching the corpse's shoulder, he felt something unnaturally hard beneath the fabric. Following his instincts, Lippy cut through the clothing, and to his astonishment, objects fell from the shoulders, causing the once imposing figure of Grindelwald to suddenly appear diminished and distorted. "This isn't Grindelwald," Lippy concluded, realizing that they were dealing with an imposter. This deception wasn't achieved through magical means, but through a much simpler, albeit gruesome, method. They broke his bones and forced them to regrow in a different shape, Lippy realized with a shudder. It dawned on him that in their focus on magical possibilities, they had overlooked the capabilities of Muggles. The technology to alter someone's physical form in such a manner lay in the hands of the non-magical world. Without hesitation, Lippy proceeded to examine Grindelwald's face more closely, his fingers probing gently. "There's a foreign object in the nose, and the chin as well," he muttered to himself, his fear escalating with each discovery. The realization hit him hard. Someone had gone to great lengths to alter this person's appearance, inserting objects beneath the skin to reshape the face. It was no wonder the appearance charm had failed to reveal the truth. The transformation hadn't been achieved through magic at all. The implications of this discovery were chilling. Not only had someone managed to perfectly mimic Grindelwald's appearance, but they had done so using methods completely undetectable by magical means. Lippy knew this revelation would have far-reaching consequences, and as he stood up from the body, a sense of urgency took hold. The real Grindelwald was still out there, and the mystery of who lay before him, and how they had come to meet such a fate, was a puzzle he was determined to solve. Chapter 620, The Disappearance of Lippy and the Investigation. Lippy now understood that the man before him was not Grindelwald. The next step was to uncover the true identity of the person impersonating him. He examined the body meticulously, searching for any marks that could reveal the corpse's identity. Upon opening the corpse's mouth, he discovered a severed tongue, which explained the silence during their last meeting. A shiver ran down Lippy's spine as he contemplated the implications of this deception. The truth behind Inge Griffith's identity was indeed disturbing. "You are not Grindelwald. Where is Grindelwald?" Lippy pondered, with the image of Inge Griffiths haunting his thoughts. His examination of the corpse eventually led to a significant discovery. Pressing on the abdomen, he felt a hard object inside the stomach. With a grimace of determination, he muttered, "There's no other way." After placing the hand of glory into the coffin for light, he reluctantly cut open the abdomen and reached inside, an action that nearly made him retch. "Oh, my God, Merlin's beard," he exclaimed, the sensation of touching the dead innards overwhelming him. After a few agonizing minutes, he extracted a ring from the stomach. The faint light revealed a family crest engraved on it. Lippy's heart skipped a beat when he recognized the emblem. Could it be German Minister of Magic, Bart Schmidt? Schmidt had been missing for months, causing unrest within the German Ministry of Magic. No one had suspected that the missing minister had been used as a decoy by Grindelwald. Securing the ring, Lippy felt a chilling realization. The current Minister of Magic of Poland was likely another imposter, possibly Grindelwald himself. So it all makes sense now, he thought, understanding the motive behind the Saint's sacrifice and Grindelwald's plan to ascend to power. Grindelwald aimed to dismantle the secrecy law, leveraging his reputation as the one who defeated the Dark Lord to gain ultimate authority in the magical world. "I must inform Minister Crouch," Lippy resolved, aware of the dire implications. He picked up the Hand of Glory and hurried out of the dark area. Shortly after entering the elevator, it abruptly stopped. "We meet again," greeted a tall Auror, casually inquiring about the file Lippy had retrieved. Confirming he had it, Lippy sensed the tension in the air. Attempting to break the silence, he asked if the Auror was on another inspection mission, only to be reminded of the importance of their duty to root out corruption. As the elevator resumed its descent, the Auror, unable to recall Lippy's name, hesitated. "Drogon," Lippy quickly supplied, introducing himself as Drogon Drago with a nervous smile. The Auror acknowledged him and exited the elevator, leaving Lippy to ponder his next move. Suddenly, he noticed blood on his pocket, a sign he had been exposed. Panicked, Lippy acted swiftly, casting a blasting curse to escape through the elevator roof. As he climbed out, he felt the temperature soar. The elevator's bottom began to melt. The Auror's voice echoed, "Remember my name," signaling the start of a perilous confrontation. Star Rosier. As the door below swung open, Star's wand emitted a red glow before detonating within the confined space of the elevator shaft. Flames surged upwards, consuming the elevator in a fiery embrace. At 221B Spider's End Lane, a sharp, brief scream pierced the silence. Tang Mi quickly turned on the desk lamp and embraced the person beside him. It's okay, he soothed, gently stroking the back of the person resting their head on the pillow. "What's wrong, Ozzy?" he asked softly. Ozzy Herd's face was etched with the remnants of a nightmare, her grip on Tang Mi's hand tight. The usually strong woman's voice trembled with vulnerability as she confessed, "I dreamed something happened to Lippy." "Lippy?" Tang Mi paused, his mind racing. After a moment, he replied, "But he's at the Ministry of Magic." "He's not at the Ministry," Ozzy interjected, her dream feeling ominously raw. He went to Poland on another assignment. Lippy, the director of the Auror training program, held a significant position. Tang Mi found it puzzling that a task would require the direct involvement of someone of Lippy's stature. Ozzy, revealing a rare moment of fear, continued, "My dream, it felt so vivid. I saw something terrible happening to him. In a Muggle family, such fears might be dismissed as mere products of the imagination, with a stern reminder that reality can be far more frightening than dreams. However, in the wizarding world, where magic intertwines with daily life, premonitions or feelings of unease could not be so easily ignored, especially when they concern loved ones potentially in danger." Tang Mi embraced Ozzy, offering a kiss on her cheek and a promise filled with determination. "I'll send people to Poland to check on him. Don't worry, Lippy will be all right." Ozzy clung to Tangmi, her beacon of hope in a moment of despair. Her concern was not born out of weakness. Lippy was a dear friend. The trio had shared a close bond, and during Tangmi's absence, following a werewolf attack, Lippy had been a pillar of support for Ozzy. After calming Ozzy and ensuring she was resting, Tangmi washed up and dressed quietly, his mind burdened with worry. Poland, he muttered to himself, recalling that John had sent star disciples there. The possibility that something had indeed happened weighed heavily on him. Without a moment's hesitation, he returned to Johnny Silverhand. "I need all the information on Poland," he commanded. In his position, his orders carried significant weight, prompting the vast network under Silverhand to spring into action. Throughout the night, Tangmi sifted through the incoming reports on Poland, his focus unwavering until a particular piece of news halted his search. The Polish Ministry of Magic was attacked by remnants of Grindelwald's followers, resulting in injuries to several employees and partial structural damage, the morning's newspaper headline read. Using his connections, Tangmi obtained photographs from the scene. Among the images of destruction and chaos, one photo stopped him cold, a hand protruding from the rubble, clutching a wand. The surrounding crowd's anger was palpable as they hurled stones at the fallen figure. The moment Tangmi recognized the wand, his heart sank. It was unmistakably Lippy's, the same wand that had been damaged in a previous encounter with a dark wizard, an encounter that had nearly cost Lippy his life, if not for Tangmi and Ozzy's timely intervention. A loud explosion echoed from Tangmi's office, followed by a hoarse roar of anguish. The newspaper, now torn to shreds, fluttered out the window, scattering pieces all the way to Nocturne Alley, where oblivious newsboys peddled their papers. In the rubble, the hand finally released its grip on the wand. At the Ministry of Magic, Old Batty perused the same newspaper, unaware of the storm of emotions it had unleashed in the hearts of those connected to the events it reported. He remained silent, not uttering a word. Pierce, with caution in his voice, inquired, "My lord?" Old Barty inhaled deeply, methodically folding the newspaper before setting it aside. His expression was composed, yet a hint of sorrow lingered in his gaze. "Apply for an investigation," Barty Sr. instructed Pierce, his tone firm. "Find him. We're considering entering Poland, but—" Pierce's voice trailed off, fraught with hesitation. The prospect of British aurors conducting cross-border investigations could potentially spark international disputes. Old Barty's response was icy. "Conduct the investigation covertly. We cannot allow our own to vanish without a trace or understanding why." There was no certainty that the individual found beneath the rubble was Lippy. Barty Sr.'s decision to take Lippy to Poland was a testament to his trust in him. The mysterious disappearance of a trusted ally was utterly unacceptable. Following Barty's directive, a covert operation was set in motion to unravel the mystery surrounding the vanished auror.